90 days from today, your waiting room could be full. Not busy, full. Patients standing. Reception struggling to keep up. Appointments getting booked in advance. Messages arriving daily. Phone calls increasing. And for the first time, you're not wondering where the next patient comes from. That's the future. And the reason it happens surprises most doctors. Because it isn't about becoming a better doctor. You already did it. You spent years doing that. The surprising reason is simpler. Patients don't choose the best doctor. They choose the doctor they understand best. That's discovery. And once I saw it, I could not stop seeing it everywhere. Okay, think about this honestly. How many incredible doctors you know who are practically invisible? A lot. And how many average doctors seems incredibly busy? Also a lot. Interestingly, because expertise and visibility are not the same thing, and patients can only choose from what they can see. I call this the understanding gap. The understanding gap, the distance between how good doctor is and how well patients understand the doctor. And in 2026, that gap is becoming more important every month. Now, let's build a picture because our future pictures are powerful. Imagine arriving at your clinic. It's 9 a.m. The day has barely started. The waiting area is already filling. Patients are discussing reels they watched. Patients are mentioning things you have explained online. Patients are arriving with trust already established. No lengthy trust building process, no convincing, no uncertainty, because much of that work happened before they entered. Okay, and that's where everything changes. Most doctors think patient acquisition starts inside the clinic. Increasingly, it starts before the clinic, on screen, on feeds, on search, on Instagram. Now, here's where resistance appears. Because some doctors immediately think, I don't want to be on camera. Fair, completely fair. Most doctors were never trained for cameras. Medical schools did not teach content creation. Residencies did not teach audience building. Nobody taught this. So the discomfort is understandable. It's normal. I call this camera resistance. Camera resistance, the discomfort that appears whenever a doctor enters unfamiliar territory. But here's what I have found. Most doctors are not actually afraid of cameras. They are afraid of judgment. Huge difference. And once they record few videos, the fear drops dramatically. Not because confidence appeared, because familiarity appeared. The first video feels uncomfortable. The 10th feels manageable. The 50th video feels normal. The 100th video feels effortless. That's how every skill develops. Nobody is born comfortable on camera. Nobody. Now let's talk about time, because this is where things become interesting. Imagine somebody told you this. If you could continue relying mainly on referrals, you will eventually build a very basic clinic. Possible? Absolutely possible. Maybe 5 years, maybe longer, maybe shorter, depends on circumstances, geography, network, and luck. Now, imagine another part. 90 days, not 5 years, 90 days. And before anything misunderstands me, the goal is not magic. The goal is acceleration. Huge difference. Because referrals grow linearly, content grows exponentially. That's the difference. One conversation reaches one person. One reel reaches 100. Sometimes 1,000, sometimes more. I call this the scale advantage. The scale advantage. The ability to build trust with many people simultaneously. And once you understand scale, the timeline changes. Everything accelerates. Let's make this practical. Now imagine explaining diabetes to 10,000 people. The explanation did not change. The reach changed. Huge difference. That's what personal branding actually is. Not self-promotion, trust distribution. The expertise already exists. The audience expands. That's all. Now, here's something fascinating. Many doctors assume patients evaluates doctor rationally. They don't, at least not initially. Patients first ask, do I understand this doctor? Then later ask, is this doctor qualified? Both matters. But understanding often comes first. I call this the familiarity principle. People trust what feels familiar. That's why content works. Not because it creates expertise, because it reveals expertise. And every reel becomes another layer of familiarity, another layer of trust, another layer of confidence. Until one day, the patient feels like they already know you, even though you have never met. Now, let's talk about what a full clinic actually means. Because it's not just more patients, right? It's confidence, it's predictability, freedom, option, when patient flow becomes predictable, everything changes. Hiring decision changes, expansion decision changes, investment decision changes, stress level changes because uncertainty shrinks and certainties grow. Now let's have an uncomfortable conversation because it matters. Mainly, doctors secretly hope the old system returns, the era where referrals alone solved everything, the era when visibility wasn't necessary, the era where patients arrived automatically, understandable, but unrealistic. Patients' behavior has already changed. The question is not whether doctors like it or not. The question is whether doctors adapt to it. The adaptation has always rewarded professionals in every industry, in every era. Now, here's the urgent part because urgency matters. Every month spent waiting, somebody else is becoming familiar to your future patients. Every month spent delaying, somebody else is building trust. Every month spent hesitating, somebody else is becoming visible. I call this the visibility race. Not because doctors are competing aggressively, because attention compounds. The earlier somebody starts, the larger the advantage becomes. Now, before this feels overwhelming, let's simplify it. You don't need a perfection, you don't need a studio, you don't need expensive equipments, you don't need charisma, you need consistency. That's it, consistency. One reel, then another, and gradually the compound effect appears. Not overnight, but faster than most of the doctor experts. That's why 90 days matters. 90 days is long enough for trust to accumulate, long enough for visibility growth, long enough for familiarity to compound. And once the momentum begins, everything becomes easier. I call this the trust flywheel. The trust flywheel, content creates visibility. Visibility creates familiarity. Familiarity creates trust. Trust creates patience. Patience creates momentum. Momentum creates more visibility. Round and round it goes. Now imagine it's December or August. 90 days from now, you walk into your clinic. Reception is active. Appointments are booked. Patients mention your content. Some discovered you through Instagram. Some discovered you through shared leads. Some discovered you through searches. And for the first time, you're not dependent on one source. You're not dependent on one referral system. You're not dependent on one relationship. You built your own visibility. That's powerful. Now let's zoom out because this might be most important question. You spend 6 years studying medicine, maybe 7, maybe 8, maybe 9 years. Years of learning anatomy, years learning diagnosis, years of learning treatment, years of earning expertise. So here's the question. Can you spend 90 days helping people discover that expertise? 90 days, not 9 years, 90 days. Because that's really what's being asked. Not becoming an influencer, not becoming a celebrity, helping patients understand you. And that's where the future begins. Let me leave you with one final picture. It's 90 days from now. The clinic feels different. The waiting room feels different. The conversation feels different. Patients arrive already trusting you, already familiar with you, already confident in you. The referral anxiety disappears. The uncertainty shrinks. The momentum grows. And somebody asks what changed, the answer would be I became a better doctor. The answer will be people finally understood the doctor I already was. And if you were willing to spend 6 to 9 years becoming a doctor, then surely you can spend 90 days making sure patients know you exist. The biggest threat to many private practice, it's not competition, it's dependency. And the scary part, most doctors don't even realize they are dependent because the system still works for now. Patients still come, referrals still happen, phones still ring, calendars still feel, at least enough to feel comfortable. And that's exactly why this trap is dangerous. Because traps don't feel dangerous when they are working. They feel comfortable. I call this the referral dependency trap. The referral dependency trap, when most of your patient flows come from sources you don't control. And once I saw this clearly, I could not stop noticing it. Let's go back for a second. Imagine it's 2010. Most doctors built practice through referrals. Patients asked families, neighbors, colleagues, and their family doctor. And honestly, that model worked incredibly well because information traveled through people. In many ways, referrals were the internet before the internet. And if you build a practice between 2010 and 2020, there was a good chance referrals became your default belief, your default strategy, your default expectations. Nothing wrong with that. The problem is assuming nothing changed. Because here's what's interesting. The behavior changed quietly, gradually, then suddenly. Okay, what we noticed was this. Today, only about 34% of patients come only through traditional referrals. Meanwhile, around 45% comes through the internet. Think about that for a second. The largest source shifted. Patient's behavior shifted. Discovery process shifted. The decision making process shifted. But many doctors did not. And that's where the danger begins. Because when reality changes, the strategy does not. Problem appears later, not immediately. Now, let's make this very practical. Imagine you receive 30 patients every week and 15 come from one senior doctor's referral. Everything feels stable. Then that doctor retires. What happens? Interesting question. Or imagine a hospital changes empowerment, a policy change, a referral stream disappears. What happens? Or imagine one relationship weakens, one source slow down, one channel dries up. What happens? The problem isn't losing referrals. The problem is depending on them. Huge difference. Dependency creates fragility, and fragile system eventually breaks. I call this the single pipe problem. The single pipe problem, when most of your water comes from one pipe. The day the pipe breaks, everything changes. Now, here's where the things become uncomfortable because many doctors know this deep down, they know it, but they don't want to think about it because the current module still feels familiar and human beings love familiarity, even when familiar is risky. Let's talk honestly. Most doctors are looking at the referral numbers from 2015 and trying to predict in 2026. That's dangerous because patients are not behaving like they behaved 10 years ago, not even close. Today, somebody has knee pain or a back pain or a skin problem or a thyroid issue. What's the first thing maybe people do? Search, right? Search Google, search YouTube, search Instagram, search everywhere. Then ask people, not the other way around. That's a shift. And here's the fascinating part. Referrals did not disappear, they evolved. Huge difference. People still refer constantly, but mechanism changed. I call this the digital referral effect. The digital referral effect. And once you understand it, the future becomes obvious. Let me show you exactly what happens. This is happening every day, thousands of times, maybe millions. Let's say you are an orthopedic doctor. You create a reel about hip pain. Now let's imagine somebody named Shamla sees it. Shamla does not have hip pain, not personally, but she remembers something. Her friend Pooja has something complaining about hip pain. And because your reel is useful, Shamla hits the share button instantly. Now, something important happens. The reels enter a private conversation, not public, a private. Shamla sends it to Pooja, then calls Pooja or messaged her. And they started discussing for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, maybe longer. Now think carefully, what's really happening here? Is Shamla promoting a reel? No, she's showing a care. Huge difference. She's saying, I thought about you, I remembered your problem, I want to help. That's what actually is happening. I call this the care transfer effect. The care transfer effect. People share information to demonstrate care, not just information. The reel becomes the social currency. The share becomes an act of friendship. The conversation becomes trust building. Now, here's where it gets powerful. During that conversation, your content gets discussed, your explanation gets discussed, your ideas get discussed, your expertise get discussed, and suddenly trust starts forming. Even though you never met Pooja, because trust transfer through conversations, then Pooja clicks your profile, watches another reel, then another, and eventually books an appointment or call the clinic or sends a message. That is a referral. It's just not the old version. The referral still happened, the recommendation still happened, the trust still happened, but content became the vehicle. That's the change. And honestly, many doctors are still missing this completely because they are looking for referrals while digital referrals are happening everywhere. Now compare the two worlds. Old world, one person recommends one doctor, end of the process. New world, one person shares one reel. The patient then watches 5 more reels, build trust, does search, make a decision, then books. Completely different journey. And if you are not present during that journey, you are invisible. Even if you are excellent, that's the painful part. The best doctors does not always win. The most visible trusted doctor often wins. Now let's talk urgency because this matters a lot. The next generation is behaving differently. Patients in their 20s, patients in their 30s, patients in their 40s, they are not automatically calling the family doctors, not always. The old communal family doctors model is failing. Gradually, not completely, but gradually. Many people aren't asking parents, they are searching. Many people are not asking neighbors, they are scrolling. Many people are not waiting for recommendations, they are searching. And every year that behavior gets stronger, not weaker. That's why ignoring content isn't neutral, it's costly. The cost is invisible, but it's real. I call this the visibility gap. The visibility gap, the distance between your expertise and the number of people who know it exists. And every year that gaps become more important. Now let's address the biggest objection, because I hear it constantly. My referrals are enough. Maybe right, but that's not wrong question. The question isn't, are referrals enough today? The question is, will referrals alone be enough tomorrow? Different question. Much more important question, because disverification creates stability, not dependency. The strongest practice don't reject referrals. They add visibility, they add education, they add content, they add trust building systems. Referrals become one engine, not only engine. Huge difference. That's what creates resilience. That's what creates predictability. That's what creates growth. So basically, the trap is not referrals. Referrals are wonderful. The trap is believing referrals are all you need. That's danger, because patient behavior already changed. The question is whether doctors are willing to admit it. Okay, let me leave you with a picture. It's 3 years from now, a patient experiences a symptom. They don't ask their patients first. They don't ask their parents first. They don't ask their neighbors first. They open Instagram, they search, they watch, they compare, they learn, they build trust, then they choose doctor. And the doctor winning in that environment won't necessarily be the loudest. They'll be the most trusted, the most visible, the most educational, the most helpful, and eventually, reels won't simplify influence the decision. They'll become the primary reason many patients choose one doctor over another. Because trust will be built before the appointment, not during the day. And that's why this matters so much. The future is not coming, it's already here. Okay, so this is the next part. I actually want to slow down for this one, because this is not a hook. This is not a content format. This is not a real strategy. This is the actual market reality you're operating inside right now. Today, whether you have thought about it or not, and I think once you see these numbers, really see them, you're going to understand why everything else we have talked about in this webinar actually matters. So let's get into it. Can a doctor survive without a personal brand in 2026? Let's actually look at the data and figure that out together. 2010 versus 2025. Let's go back for a second. Two completely different worlds. And I don't think most doctors have fully internalized how different they are, because the shift happened slowly. You did not wake up one morning and suddenly noticed it. It happened gradually, year after year, platform after platform, patient after patient. But if you zoom out, the difference is massive. In 2010, patient discovery operated almost entirely on referrals. That was the system. Patient would ask, "Do you know a good doctor for this?" Family members were answered, friends answered, neighbors answered, colleagues answered. A doctor got recommended. The patient trusted the recommendation. The appointment got booked. That was the entire funnel. Step 1, patient asks for recommendation. Step 2, doctors get referred. Step 3, patient books appointment. Done. That was healthcare marketing. And here's the important part. Being a clinically good doctor was enough. You did not need Instagram, YouTube, personal brand, content creation. You simply needed to be good at your job. Word of mouth handled the rest. Satisfied patients became marketing. Satisfied patient became distribution. Satisfied patient became growth. And the numbers supported that. 97.9% of patients used referrals to recommend their first physician. 97.9%. That basically the entire market operating through one mechanism. Now let's jump into 2025. Completely different world, completely different patient behavior. Today, 74 to 80% of patients search online before booking. Read that again. Before booking. Not after, not during, before. That means patient discovery has fundamentally changed. The funnel changed, the journey changed, the decision-making process changed. Patients no longer move directly from referrals to appointments. Today, they move through digital validation first. Referral, Google search, Instagram check, reviews, trust building, appointment. That's the new reality. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Being a good doctor is no longer enough. I know that can be difficult to hear, but the data supports it. Because patient can only choose doctors they discover. And discovery has moved online. Let's go deeper because the numbers become even more interesting. 77% check social media before booking. Think about that. 3 out of 4 potential patients are checking social media before making a decision. Before they call, before they WhatsApp, before they book. They are checking Instagram. They are checking, who is this doctor? Can I trust them? Do they know what they are talking about? Do they explain things clearly? And if they can't find answers, they often move on. Not because you are a bad doctor, because they found another doctor who was easier to trust. Since COVID, healthcare content on Instagram increased by 93%, almost doubled. That tells us something important. Patients changed, doctors changed, attention shifted. People began searching for health information online at unprecedented levels, and healthcare professionals started creating content to meet that demand. But here's what important. Not every doctor moved. Some doctors embraced the shift, some ignored it. And that's where the opportunity exists. Now, let's look at the most important numbers. 73% of patients trust health content shared by doctors on Instagram. Think about that. 73%. Not influencers, not anonymous pages, doctors. Patient trust doctors, which means every reel, every video, every piece of content, every explanation becomes a trust building asset. And trust is the foundation of every appointment. This is where things become really interesting. Right now, there is high demand, high trust, low consistent supply. That's a market imbalance. And market imbalance does not last forever. Whenever demand exceeded supply, opportunity exists. That's true in the business, that's true in the investing, that's true in healthcare content. Patient want health information. Patient trust doctors, but most doctors still are not posting consistently. That's the opportunity. Early movers are already winning. Let's be honest. We are already seeing this happen. Doctors who started posting during pandemic gained massive audience. Thousands of followers, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, some crossed into lakhs. Why? Because they entered while supply was extremely low. Demand exploded. Supply remained limited and they benefited. Now here's the reality. The window is still open, but it's closing fast. Why? Why 2026 and 2027 matter? This is not one of those. You should probably get on social media someday conversations. This is a genuine market opportunity. The next 2 years matters a lot because every year more doctors enter. Every year competition increases. Every year patient expectation rises. And eventually the market becomes crowded. The doctors who move now will be completely in different position from doctors who wait. That's simply how adaptation curves work. The responsibility side of personal branding. Now, I don't want to discuss this is only as a business opportunity. There's this another side to this conversation. Responsibility. Doctors have a responsibility online, and I think that responsibility falls into 3 categories. Responsibility 1. Simplify complex health topics. Patients are overwhelmed. Information is everywhere, and most people struggle to separate good advice, bad advice, marketing, science. Doctors have the ability to simplify, and that ability creates value. Not just for your practice, for society. Responsibility 2. Combat misinformation. This one matters a lot. 57% of Instagram users actively search for information. 57. That means health information is being consumed regardless. The only question is who provides it? If doctors don't fill the space, someone else will. And that someone else may not be qualified. Responsibility 3. Humanize the profession. For a long time, doctors have felt distance, intimidately difficult to approach. Social media changes that. Patients can see the person behind the doctor. For the long time, doctors have felt distance, intimidating, difficult to approach. Social media changes that. Patients can see the person behind the doctor, the stories behind the profession, the human side of the healthcare, and that's built stronger relationships. Most doctors think personal branding equals more patient. That's true, but it's incomplete because branding creates opportunity beyond appointments. It can lead to consulting opportunities, speaking opportunities, seminar invitation, guest lectures, partnerships, advisory roles. Sometimes before you have even started your own practice, that's the power of visibility. People can't hire you if they don't know you existed. The difference between chasing and attracting. Without a personal brand, you can chase opportunity. With personal brand, opportunity finds you. Hospitals notice you. Association notice you. Media colleges notice you. Conference organizers notice you. Visibility changes the direction of the opportunity flow. Let's bring everything together. Do you need a personal brand? Yes. Whether you are running a clinic, working in a hospital, starting your career, building your reputation, personal branding matters because patient discovery has changed and personal branding is one of the cheapest marketing channels available. Paid advertising stops working when you stop paying. A personal brand keeps working. Content compounds, trust compounds, attention compounds. Faces are more memorable than words. Think about how people remember doctors. A face from Instagram or a name from a directory. Which one sticks? The face. Human memory is visual. People remember faces. People remember stories. People remember personalities. Far more than names on a list. The honest truth. Now I want to be fair. Can you become successful without a personal brand? Yes, absolutely. Many doctors already have, and many still will. But here's the difference. If two doctors have identical qualification and one doctor consistently build trust online, that doctor gains advantage. Not because they are better clinically, because they are more visible. The visibility influences trust. The real obstacle, let's be honest, the biggest problem isn't understanding the opportunity. The biggest problem is time. You're busy. You're seeing patients, managing stuff, running clinics, handling operations, managing family responsibilities, and now someone tells you also become a content creator. That feels overwhelming, which is exactly why we built the Doctor Creator Toolkit. The Doctor Creator Toolkit built specifically for doctors, built specifically for busy professionals, built specifically for people who don't want content creation becoming a second full-time job. Inside, you will find 365-day content calendar, so you'll never stare at a blank page wondering what to post, 30 storytelling formulas, so you can turn everyday experience into engaging content. 20 complete modules designed specifically for doctors who want to attract patients through Instagram. Everything structured, everything organized, everything ready to use. The data is clear. 74 to 80% search online before booking. 77% check social media. 73% trust doctor created Instagram content. This is not a trend. This is the new patient discovery system. And the window to establish yourself while competition is still relatively low is open right now. But it won't stay open forever. Click the link below, get the Doctor Creator Toolkit and start building the personal brand that protects your career for next 10 years, not just next 10 patients. Instagram is not a marketing platform. That's the mistake most doctors make. And honestly, it's an easy mistake to make, right? Because when people hear Instagram, they think marketing, advertising, promotion, brand building, patient acquisition, visibility. That's what everybody says. That's what everybody teaches. That's what everybody assumes. And that's exactly why so many doctors struggle. Because I found something interesting. The doctors who succeed on Instagram usually stop thinking about marketing first and start thinking about trust. Everything changes after that. I call this the trust transfer effect. The trust transfer effect, and once you understand it, and Instagram suddenly becomes much easier to use. Here's the discovery. Patients rarely watch one video and immediately book. Almost never. That's not how trust works. That's not how healthcare works. That's not how human beings work. Patients watch, then again watch, and eventually they book. The booking is not the event. The booking is the result. Big difference. I remember speaking with a doctor about this. A patient had booked an appointment. Routine consultation, nothing unusual. Then, during the conversation, the patient casually mentioned something fascinating. They had watched multiple videos before calling. Not one, multiple. That the patient remembered specific explanation, specific examples, specific advice, and the booking happened later. Trust happened first. And that's when something clicked for me. Instagram wasn't generating patients. Instagram was generating trust. Huge distinction. The patient simply converted after enough trust accumulated. I call this the trust account. The trust account, every reel creates a deposit. Every explanation creates a deposit. Every myth corrected creates a deposit. Every patient concern addressed creates a deposit. And eventually the account becomes large enough. The action happens. Patients call, patients message, and they book. Not because of one rule, because of accumulated trust. Now let's talk about why this matters. Because categories matters. The way we categorize something determine how we use it. A knife in a kitchen is useful. A knife used for a screwdriver is frustrating. Not because knife is bad, because the category is wrong. Instagram works exactly the same way. If you think Instagram is primarily a marketing platform, you create a marketing content. And marketing content usually performs poorly for doctors. I call this the category conditioning. Category conditioning, the labels we assign create actions we take, and the actions creates the outcome. Doctor hears marketing. Then they start talking about themselves, their qualification, their achievements, their hospitals, their equipments, awards, facilities. And here's the strange part. Patients rarely care as much as doctors think. Not initially. Patients care about themselves, their symptoms, their fears, their concerns, their questions, their confusion. That's what capture attention. Now, before anyone misunderstands me, qualification matters, experience matters, expertise matters, absolutely. But those things become powerful after trust begins, not before. Patients don't usually think, show me your certificates. Patients usually think, can you help me understand my problem? Different question, very different question. And here's where everything speeds up, because once you stop treating Instagram as marketing, you stop promoting and start educating. The shift changes everything. Education creates trust, promotion requests trust. Once earn it, the other assumes it. Huge difference. Think about your own behavior. You meet two people. The first spends 10 minutes talking about themselves. The second spends 10 minutes helping you. Who do you trust more? Easy answer. Patients behave exactly the same way. I call this the helper advantage. The helper advantage, the person creating values earns attention. The person demanding attention loses it. And this explains why some doctors grow rapidly while others struggle despite being excellent clinicals. The growing doctors understand the medium. The struggling doctors misunderstand the medium. That's usually the difference, because every platform has a native behavior. Every platform rewards something. Instagram rewards value, rewards usefulness, rewards attention, rewards engagement, rewards education, and patients reward trust. That's the overlap. That's where growth happens. Now let's build this further, because another interesting thing happens. When doctors stop promoting themselves, patients start promoting them. That's the irony. The less obsessed you become with promotion, the more promotion naturally occurs. Patients share your reels, patients send your content, patients recommend your profile, patients talk about your explanation. That's how trust spreads. I call this the trust multiplier. The trust multiplier, one patient trusts you, then shares you, then three more patients discover you, then trust compounds. That's how influence grow, not through self-promotion, through trust transfer. Here's a funny example. Imagine a doctor creates 10 reels. 9 are about health education, 1 is about themselves. Which reel do you think patients remember? Usually the educational one. Because patients remember value, not introductions, not biographies, not announcements. Value. Always value. Now, let's address another objection. Because many doctors quietly think this, if I talk about my hospital, how will people know about it? Fair question, very fair. But here's what we discovered. Patients who trust the doctors eventually discovered the hospital. Patients who distrust the doctor usually don't care about hospital. Trust comes first, facilities come second, trust comes first, location comes second, trust comes first, everything else comes second. And this is why understanding the medium matters so much. The medium only becomes useful when you understand its real purpose. That's true for everything. Imagine buying an MRI machine, then using it as a table. Ridiculous. Not because the machine is bad, because the purpose was misunderstood. Instagram works exactly the same way. The purpose is not promotion. The purpose is trust transfer. The purpose is reducing uncertainty. The purpose is building familiarity. The purpose is helping patients understand you before meeting you. And once that happens, patient acquisitions become easier naturally. Not because you chased patients, because patients became comfortable. Huge difference. Let's talk about comfort for a second. Because comforts drive healthcare decisions more than some people realize. Patients choose doctor they feel comfortable with. Patients choose doctor they understand. Patients choose doctor they trust. And content accelerate all three. A patient watches enough videos. Suddenly you feel familiar. Not famous, familiar. And familiarity is powerful. I call this the familiarity advantage. The familiarity advantage, the patient feels they have already met you. Even though they haven't, the first consultation feels easier. Trust forms faster. Conversation becomes smoother. That's what content is really doing. Not marketing, relationship building. Now, here's where things become exciting because once a doctor truly understands this, content becomes easier, much easier. You stop asking, how do I promote myself? And start asking, how do I help patients today? Completely different questions. One creates pressure, the other creates purpose. And the purpose is easier to sustain. That's why the best doctor creators sounds like marketers because they are not trying to market, they are trying to explain, they are trying to educate, they are trying to help. And ironically, that approach creates the strongest growth. The doctor chasing popularity often struggle. The doctor chasing usefulness often become popular. Funny how that works. So basically, Instagram is not a patient acquisition platform, at least not directly. Instagram is a trust transfer platform. Patient acquisition is simply what happens after, once enough trust accumulates. That's the reframe. And once you accept the reframe, everything starts making sense. Let me leave you with a picture. Imagine it's 1 year from now. You open your Instagram account, thousands of patients have watched your content. Hundreds of have shared it. Doctors in your city recognize your name. Patients arrive saying, I have been following your videos. Medical conferences start inviting you to speak. Podcasts invite you. Organizations invite you. Local media notices you. Not because you promoted yourself relentlessly, because you educate relentlessly, because you cared more about health education than self promotion, because you focused on trust instead of marketing. And somewhere along the way, the views arrived, the popularity arrived, the patience arrived, the opportunity arrived, not because you chased them, because trust attracted them. And that's the moment you realize Instagram was never a marketing platform in the first place. It was always a trust transfer platform. Most doctors are not afraid of Instagram. They are afraid of what Instagram means. That's the real issue because somewhere in back of their mind there is a conflict, a very uncomfortable conflict. If I post content, am I promoting myself? If I explain medical topics, am I advertising? If patients discover me online, am I crossing a line? And here's what's interesting. The biggest blocker is not usually technology. It's not camera, it's not editing, it's not time, it's identity. The doctors want to help. The doctors wants more patients. But the doctors don't want to become a promoter. That's the conflict. I call this the identity conflict. The identity conflict. The moment two beliefs collide, I should educate patients and I should not promote myself. And until that conflict is resolved, most doctors stay stuck. Not because they don't want growth, because they want integrity. Huge difference. Now, here's the discovery. Education and promotion are not the same thing, not even close. Many doctors accidentally put them into the same category, and once that happened, everything becomes confusing. I call this the category confusion. The category confusion, when two completely different activities get treated as identical, and that's create hesitation. Let's simplify this. Imagine a teacher explain mathematics. Is that a promotion? Of course not. Imagine a lawyer explains consumer rights. Is that a promotion? Of course not. Imagine a nutritionist explain healthy eating. Is that a promotion? Again, no. Now imagine a doctor explains symptoms of diabetes. Why would that suddenly becomes a promotion? Interesting question. And the answers matters because the medium changed, but the activity did not. The doctors is still educating, the doctors is still informing, the doctors is still helping. Once the delivery mechanism changed, a clinic room, a seminar hall, a newspaper article, a television interview, a Instagram reel, different medium, same educational act, huge distinction. Now let's make this practical because comparisons make things easier. I want to walk through 7 situations, 7 simple comparisons, and by the end, the distinction becomes obvious. Case 1, a doctor says these are the common symptoms of thyroid problems. Education. Clearly, education. The focus is understanding, the focus is awareness, the focus is helping. Now compare it. A doctor says, I am the best thyroid specialist in the city. Promotion. The focus shifted, the spotlight moved, the patient disappeared, the doctor became the subject. Big difference. Case 2. A doctor explains why acne returns despite treatment. Education. The patient learns, the patient benefits, the patient gains clarity. Now compare it. A doctor says, my clinic has most advanced acne treatments. Promotion. Again notice the shift. One focuses on problem, the other focuses on seller. Case 3. A doctor explains warning sign of heart attack. Education. Public awareness. Public benefit. Public value. Now compare it. A doctor says, book your consultation today before slots run out. Promotion. Different intent, different outcome, different category. Case 4. A pediatrician explains when fever becomes dangerous. Education, parents became informed, children benefit, society benefit. Now compare it. A pediatrician repeatedly talks about how successful they are. Promotion, the educational value disappears. The spotlight moves again. Case 5. A dermatologist explains sunscreen myths. Education, a myth gets corrected. Patients become smarter. Public understanding improves. Now compare it. A dermatologist spends the entire reel discussing awards. Promotion. Nothing wrong with awards, but awards don't educate. Big distinction. Case 6. A doctor explains how lifestyle affects blood pressure. Educational. The audience leaves smarter. The audience gains value. Now compare it. A doctor spends 3 minutes praising their hospital promotion. Again, different category entirely. Case 7. A doctor explains symptoms that should never be ignored. Educational, potentially life-saving information. Public service. Now compare it to a doctor repeatedly asking patients to choose them. Promotion. The intent changed, the focus changed, everything changed. Okay, now look at those 7 examples together. A pattern appears. The educational example focuses on the patient. The promotional example focuses on the doctor. That's the simple explanation I have ever found. I call this the spotlight test. The spotlight test, where is the spotlight? On the patient's problem or on the doctor's important. That's usually the answer. And once doctor understands this, the identity conflicts begins disappearing because they realize something important. Education is not self-promotion. Education is service, contribution, and responsibility. In many ways, education is part of profession itself. Okay, now here's something funny. Patients can feel the difference immediately and the audience is incredibly sensitive. They know when somebody is helping and they know when somebody is selling. Usually within seconds, that's why this matters. I call this audience radar. People instinctively detect intent. If the intent feels helpful, trust increases. If the intent feels promotional, trust decreases. Simple. And this is where many people get confused because they assume visibility creates distrust. Not necessarily. Promotion creates distrust. Different thing. A doctor can become highly visible through education and still remain trusted. Actually, the visibility often comes because of the trust, not despite it. Think about doctors you admire. Most likely you admire them because they taught something useful, not because they constantly promoted themselves. The teaching create authority. The authority create trust. The trust create reputation. That's the sequence. Some doctors think patients online cannot be won. Interesting phase. Cannot be won. But patients are not prizes. Patients are people. Patients don't want to be won. People want to be helped. Huge difference. Once you stop trying to win people and trying to educate people, everything changes. Pressure disappears. Authenticity increases. Trust increases. That's why educational content feels easier because it's aligned with the doctor's identity. You are not becoming somebody else. You are becoming more of what you have already are. A teacher, a guide, a professional, and honestly, this might be the most important shift in the entire program. Not because it changes content, because it changes behavior. Once the identity conflict disappears, doctors post consistently, doctor shares confidently, doctor communicate naturally. The resistance faced because now the activity feels ethical, it feels aligned, it feels corrected, and that's powerful. I call this belief alignment. Belief alignment. When your action matches your identity, when your behavior matches your value, when your growth no longer feels uncomfortable. And here's the irony, the doctors who obsess over promotion usually struggle. The doctors who obsess over education usually grow. Funny how that's work because audience reward value always, not eventually, immediately. So basically, the question is not should doctors promote themselves. The better question is should doctors educate patients? And I think everybody already knows the answer. The answer is yes. The medium changed, the responsibility did not. Let me leave you with a picture. Imagine it's 1 year from now, you have posted hundreds of educational videos. Patients recognize your face, patients trust your explanation, patients arrive informed, patients arrive confident, patients arrive already familiar with your approach. Medical association invites you to speak. Health organizations invite you to educate. Media channels invite you to comment. Not because you promoted yourself, because you educated consistently, because you focused on the spotlight on the patients, not yourself. The most interesting part, the audience still loves you because audience rarely hate educators, they hate promoters even when the promoter is a doctor. And once you understand this distinction, everything becomes much easier. So this part, I think this might be honestly be the part that matters most for a lot of you watching this. Because here's the real fear, the actual thing sitting in the back of a doctor's mind when they think about posting on Instagram. It's not will this get views, it's will I look silly? Will my patients see this and think less of me? Will other doctors see this and think I have lost my mind? Will people think I'm trying too hard? The fear is real, and honestly, it's a legitimate fear. Because let's be honest, a lot of content online does look silly. A lot of content feels cringe. A lot of content looks like people trying to become influencers instead of professionals. And that's exactly why this module matters. Because today I'm going to show you 4 trust first formats, not trust chasing formats, not dancing formats, not pointing at text formats. Formats that makes you look exactly like what you already are. A competent doctor, an experienced professional, someone worth trusting, and the best part, they still work extremely well on Instagram. So let's get into it. Format 1, the case study format. Here's the thing about credibility. Real credibility, the kind that actually converts viewers into patients. Nothing builds faster than outcomes. Not camera quality, not editing, not lighting, not trending audio. Outcomes. People trust results. And that's exactly what the case study format delivers. How it works. You take a real patient scenario without revealing any identity information, without violating privacy, and you walk through the case. What happened, what symptoms were present, what you noticed, what you considered, what treatment approach was chosen, what happened next. You are essentially showing your clinical thinking in action. Not talking about your expertise, showing about your expertise. And that's a huge difference. Why this format works? This format instantly communicates 2 things. 1, competence. People get to see how you think, not just what do you think. Second, proof of work. There's a real outcome, a real before, a real after, and outcome creates trust much faster than claims. Something important to understand. This format usually does not go viral, and I want to be honest about that. Most case studies are not designed for massive reach. They are not. Shockingly enough, emotional enough, trendy enough to explode into millions of views. But here's what they do instead. They attract the highest quality patient, the patient who actually book, the patients who actually trust you, the patients who are genuinely evaluating you as a doctor. Think about it. Someone willing to watch detailed case breakdown is not casually scrolling anymore. They are paying attention. They are actively reassessing whether they want your help. And by end of the video, many of them have already decided. Inside the Doctor Creator Toolkit, you will find conversion reel frameworks, a complete system for structuring case studies so they build trust and convert viewers into patients. Format 2, the deep dive format. Now let's move to the second format, the deep dive format. This builds authority, but it does it without becoming a lecture. Because here's the reality. Most doctors know far more than patients need. You could easily explain a topic for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. But Instagram does not reward long explanations. Instagram rewards clarity. That's where deep dives come in. How it works: take a topic that normally requires 10 minutes, compress it into 60 seconds. That's a challenge. That's the skill. And honestly, that's a sign of mastery. Because anyone can understand a topic in 10 minutes. It takes real understanding to explain the same thing in under a minute. People love shortcuts not because they are lazy, because they are busy. And once someone finds a doctor who can simplify complex information, trust increases immediately. Because clarity signals expertise, complexity does not. Here's the test: can you explain something complicated simply? If yes, people will save it, people will share it, people remember it. And most importantly, people trust it. Pro tip: turn deep dives into scenarios. Don't create one, create 10. Because repeated exposure creates positioning. Instead of becoming a doctor who posted a good video, you become the doctor whose deep dives I always learn from. That's a completely different level of authority. Inside the toolkit, you will find latest trend series, a framework of creating recurring content series without running out of ideas. Format 3, the framework format. This is one of the most underrated formats doctor can use, because doctors who explain systems automatically appears more organized, more structured, more trustworthy. People trust systems, they trust processes, they trust frameworks. Instead of giving random advice, you explain your process. Examples: my 3-step approach to managing high blood pressures, the framework I use when evaluating knee pain, my decision making process for treating acne. The exact topic doesn't matter. What matters is revealing the structure behind your thinking, because frameworks are memorable. People forget information, but they remember systems. They remember 3 steps, 5 pillars, 4 stages, 1 framework. Those structures stick. And that's exactly why these posts get saved. The save advantage. This is important. Instagram repeatedly resurfaces saved content, which means every time someone revisits the framework, they see your face again, they see your profile again, they see your name again. The framework earns the save. The save earns the respected exposure, and the respected exposure builds familiarity. Familiarity builds trust. Trust builds patient. Inside the Doctor Creator Toolkit, you will find 25 evergreen content formats, ready-made structures designed specifically for the framework-based content. Format 4, the lessons learned format. This one might be most human format of all 4, and honestly, it's one of the most underused, because doctors are trained to project certainty. They train to project confidence. They are trained to project competence, not vulnerability. But here's the interesting thing. Nothing feels more trustworthy than hearing someone says, I used to think this, I was wrong. That sentence alone creates trust. It communicates humility, reflection, growth, experience, because you don't arrive at I used to think without actually doing the work, without seeing the real patients, without gaining real experience, without evolving. And people trust evolution more than perfection. How to structure it? Tell the story, don't just state the lesson. Walk people through what happened, what you believed, what changed the belief, what changed, what you have learned. Stories create connection, and connection creates trust, because people learn through mistakes, not just success. Your lessons becomes their shortcut, and that makes the content highly relatable, often highly shareable, sometimes even viral. Why people love this format? Because people learn through mistakes, not just success. Your lessons become their shortcuts, and that makes the content highly relatable, often highly shareable, sometimes even viral, because people see themselves in the story. Pro tip: always attach a story. Story makes a lesson memorable. Story makes lesson emotional. Story makes lessons human. Inside the Doctor Creator Toolkit, you will find 30 storytelling formulas designed specifically to help doctors turn lessons into engaging stories. Before we wrap up, I want to give you a few quick bonus pointers. Myth breaking. Correcting misconceptions build trust, because you are not teaching something new, you are replacing something incorrect. And replacing the bad information is one of the strongest trust signals possible. Q&A content. Questions and answers work extremely well because they are interactive, personal, useful, shareable. People often share answers to the question they were already asked, which expands your reach naturally. Never call yourself an expert. This is probably the most important mindset shift in the entire module. Never say, trust me, I am expert. Your content should prove it. Let your case studies, deep dives, framework, lessons learned do the talking. Because demonstrated expertise is always more powerful than claimed expertise. If you stick to these four trust first formats, case study, deep dive, framework, lessons learned, you will never look silly online. You won't look like an influencer. You won't look like you are chasing trends. You won't look like you are trying too hard. You look exactly like what you are. If you stick to these four trust first formats, case study, deep dive, frameworks, lesson learned, you will never look silly online. You won't look like an influencer. You won't look like you are chasing trends. You won't look like you are trying too hard. You look like exactly what you already are. A doctor with expertise, a doctor with systems, a doctor with experience, a doctor worth listening to. Everything we covered today is already inside the Doctor Creator Toolkit, including conversion reel frameworks for case studies, latest trend series for deep dives, 25 evergreen formats for frameworks, 30 storytelling formulas for lessons learned. And that's just the beginning. You'll also get 365-day content calendar, so you are never wondering what to post. Instagram profile optimization, so your profile converts visitors into followers and patients. Camera confidence technique for doctors who feel uncomfortable on camera, and much more. The research behind this, everything inside the toolkit comes from research. Over 1000 viral hook templates, 2000 real content examples, 26,054 doctors reels researched. That's not an guess. That's not a small sample. That's a massive data set of real world content across specialties including pediatricians, dermatologists, gynecologists, general practitioners, nutritionists, cosmetic surgeon, neurologist, orthopedic surgeon, psychiatrist. Whatever your specialty, the data includes doctors like you. Don't keep guessing. Don't keep wondering which format works. Don't keep hoping you accidentally find something that doesn't feel cringe. Get the Doctor Creator Toolkit, get all four trust first formats, get every framework, get every system, get every template, and start posting like doctor you actually are. Not like someone trying to be an influencer. Click the link below, grab the Doctor Creator Toolkit, and start building the trust on Instagram with your very next post. Most doctors think they need more knowledge before making their first reel. That's exactly what slowed them down. Here's what interesting. The doctors who make progress fastest usually start before they feel ready. The doctor who wait until they feel confident often stays stuck in the longest. And I know some of you are thinking, I'll start after I understand everything. I'll start after I learn the framework. I'll start after I know what works. Sounds reasonable, completely logical, and completely dangerous, right? Because the perfection creates delay. Delay creates inactivity. Inactivity creates nothing. I found something fascinating. Doctors rarely overcome fear through explanation. Doctors overcome fear through action. Very different, right? That's why I want to do something unusual. Not because it's comfortable, because it works. And I call this the commitment trigger. The commitment trigger, the moment somebody stops learning about something and starts doing it. And once the commitment trigger happens, everything changes. Suddenly the question becomes real. The challenge becomes visible. The gaps becomes obvious. And that's exactly what we want. So let's do something together. Right now, not later, not tomorrow, not after the webinar. Pick one topic, any topic. Don't overthink. That's important. Whatever patient question appears first, use that. Maybe acne, maybe diabetes, hair loss, knee pain, thyroid issues, anything. Choose one. Now imagine a patient sitting in front of you. Not 10 patients, one patient. Very important. One patient. The patient asks a question you have answered hundreds of times, maybe thousands. Now answer it. That's it. Literally answer it in one sentence. Don't optimize it. Don't improve it. Don't analyze it. Just answer it. Now imagine turning your camera on and saying exactly that. Congratulations. You already have the beginning of a reel. And here's where something funny happens. Most doctors immediately start arguing, not with me, with themselves. The brain says, that can't be enough. That sounds too simple. What if nobody watches? What if it's not good? What if I looked awkward? Welcome to being human. Every creator experiences this. Every doctor experiences this. Every entrepreneur experiences this. Every person creating something experiences this. Now, here's the discovery. The goal was not creating a perfect reel. The goal was creating movement. Movement matters. Perfection does not, at least not initially, because movement teaches lessons. Thinking does not. Let's continue. You have your topic, you have your patient questions, you have your answer. Now imagine recording it. What happens next? Something interesting. The reel suddenly feels incomplete. You start noticing things. The opening feels weak. The explanation feels unclear. The ending feels missing. Something feels off. Good. That's exactly what should happen. I call this the awareness gap. The awareness gap, the moment action reveals what theory cannot. Before creating the reel, everything seems confusing. After creating the reel, the confusion becomes specific. Huge difference. Okay, now think about medicine. Nobody learns surgery by reading forever. Nobody learns consultation by studying forever. Nobody learns communication by thinking forever. At same point, action enters the picture and action changes everything. The same applies here. Okay, now let's talk about overthinking because doctors are exceptionally good at it. I mean that respectfully. But it's true. Doctors are trained to be precise. Doctors are trained to be careful. Doctors are trained to reduce mistakes. Those are incredible skills inside a clinic, not always inside content creation because content rewards iterations, not perfection. Now, imagine a child learning to walk. Would you wait until balance is perfect? Of course not. The falling creates the learning. The movement creates the improvement, right? The content works exactly the same way. Here's what we noticed repeatedly. Doctors who create one imperfect reel usually create another, then another, then another. Doctors who endlessly prepare usually prepare longer. That's the trap. I call this the preparation loop. The preparation loop, the belief that most preparation creates confidence when actually more action creates confidence. And once you see this, you start noticing it everywhere. People think confidence comes first, action comes second. The reality is usually reversed. Action creates confidence. Confidence follows. Now, here's what things get exciting because you have already done something important. You have created something, maybe rough, maybe incomplete, awkward, but real. The real beats imaginary every single time. Now, let's examine the reel you mentally created. Does it feel perfect? Probably not. Does it feel powerful? Probably not. Does it feel complete? Definitely not. Excellent. That's the point because explanation creates curiosity, experience creates desire. Huge difference. If I spent 20 minutes explaining frameworks, some people would care, some would not. But once you have attempted a reel, now imagine, now the missing piece matters. Now the framework matters. Now the structure matters. The system matters because you have experienced the gap. I call this the desire gap, the space between where you are and where you want to be. And nothing creates desire faster than experiencing the gap personally. Think about fitness. Reading about fitness creates interest. Walking upstairs and getting breathless creates desire. Massive difference. The same thing happens here. Creating one imperfect reel changes everything because suddenly the challenges become visible. You start asking better questions. How do I start stronger? How do I keep attention? How do I build interest? How do I build trust? How do I get patience? How do I improve retention? How do I create action? Those questions only appear after movement. Before movement, everything feels theoretical. After movement, everything becomes practical. And here's something that surprised me. The best doctor creators were not necessarily the most talented. They were not necessarily the most confident ones. They were not necessarily the most charismatic. They simply started earlier. That's it. While others were planning, they were posting. While others were researching, they were learning from reality. While others were waiting, they were improving. Now, let's talk about fear for a second. Because fear is usually hiding underneath all of this. Fear of judgment, fear of mistakes, fear of looking inexperienced, fear of looking uncomfortable, perfectly normal. But here's what I have found. Patients don't expect creators. Patients expect doctors. Big difference. Patients are not judging your editing. Patients are not grading your performance. Patients want clarity. That's it. And clarity improves with repetition, not with waiting. The first reel teaches the second reel teaches the third reel teaches the 10th teaches the 100th. That's how improvement works, not through theory, through repetitions. So basically, the first reel isn't supposed to be amazing. The first reel is supposed to exist. That's the goal, existence, not excellence, at least initially. And here's the thrilling part. Once you start, the game changes. You are no longer wondering if you can do it. You are improving something real. You are refining something real. You are optimizing something real. That's completely a different world. Now, imagine two doctors. One spends 6 months preparing, the other spends 6 months posting. Who learns more? The answer is obvious. Reality is the best teachers. Always. So if you are waiting for confidence, don't. If you are waiting for certainty, don't. If you are waiting for perfect knowledge, definitely not. Because those things usually arrive later, not before. Let me leave you with a picture. Imagine it's 3 months from now. You look back at the reel you created today. You smile, maybe even laugh because it wasn't very good, but it existed. And because it existed, the second reel existed, then the third, then the 10th, then the 50th. Patients started recognizing you. Patients started following you. Patients started sharing your content. Patients started booking consultations. Not because the first reel was brilliant, because the first reel happened. That's the secret. The doctors who win are not doctors who wait. They are the doctors who begin. First make a reel, then improve it. First create a movement, then create mastery. And one day you will realize the reel that changed everything was the imperfect one you almost never made. Most doctor reels are lost before doctor finishes the first sentence. Not because the advice is bad, not because doctor lacks expertise, because of the opening line. That's the discovery. The first 3 seconds decide almost everything. Not the treatment, not the explanation, not the CTA, the opening line. And once I noticed this, I could not stop seeing it everywhere because doctors and patients experience content very differently. Doctors sees information, patient sees decision. Every reel begins with a decision. Should I keep watching or should I keep scrolling? That's what really happening. Here's what interesting. I spend a lot of time looking at doctor reels. Some got ignored, some got exploded, some got patience, some disappeared. And I expect the difference to be medical expertise. It was not. I expected the difference to be confidence on camera. It was not. I expected the difference to be editing. It was not. The difference appeared much earlier, the first few seconds. And what I found surprised me. The best performing reels rarely started with education. They started with discovery. That's the key distinction. Discovery, not education. One sounds like a lecture, the other sounds like a finding. And patients react very differently. I call this the discovery effect. The discovery effect, when people feel they are discovering something, attention raises. When people feel they are being taught something, attention often drops. Especially online. Think about your own behavior. You open YouTube, one video says, diabetes explained. Other says, the surprising reason some diabetics struggle. Despite doing everything correctly, which one creates curiosity? The second one, every single time. Because the brain loves discoveries. The brain loves finding. The brain loves hidden things. The brain loves surprises. Human beings are naturally curious. That's not marketing, that's psychology. And this is where many doctors accidentally lose attention. They begin with information before creating curiosity. They started with answers before creating questions. A doctor starts a reel. Today I will explain cholesterol, education, helpful, completely reasonable, and yet many viewers leave. Not because cholesterol is not important, because curiosity never appeared. Now compare it to this. Most people worry about wrong cholesterol number. Suddenly something changes. The viewer leans forward, the brain wakes up, the brain says, wait, what do you mean? Right. That's the discovery effect. And the difference is massive. Okay, now here's the part that fascinated me. When a lesson feels like finding, people lean in. When lesson feels like school, people lean away. Not always, but often. Patients don't open Instagram hoping for a lecture. Patients open Instagram looking for relevance, looking for answers, looking for discoveries, looking for things they did not know. I call this category conditioning. Category conditioning because patients have been trained not by doctors, by years of consuming content. Their brains have learned patterns. The moment content feels like predictable, attention drops. The moment content feels unexpected, attention rises. Think about movies, think about books, think about conversations, think about gossips. The interesting parts are always discoveries. Never introduction, never agendas, never explanation. The discovery comes first, then the explanation, and that's how attention works. Okay, now let's address a common objection, because almost every doctor thinks this at some point. My job is to educate. Correct, absolutely correct. Education matters. Education improves outcome. Education builds trust. Nobody is arguing about education, right? The mistake is assuming education must come first. That's where the problem begins. Because patient needs a reason to listen before education arrives. That's the missing piece. I call this the invitation principle. The invitation principle: curiosity invites attention. Attention invites education. Education invites trust. Trust invites action. That's the sequence, right? Most doctors accidentally reverse it. They start educating immediately without creating curiosity, without creating expectations, without creating anticipation, and the audience never arrives. Here's a funny example. Imagine walking into a cinema, the movie starts, the actor immediately explains the ending. No mystery, no tension, no curiosity, no anticipation. Boring, right? Now imagine the actor says, something happened that changed everything. Suddenly you're interested. You need a context, you need an answer, you need the story. That's human nature. And here's something we notice repeatedly. The best doctor reel often begin with contradiction, something unexpected, something surprising, something patients were not expecting. Not because surprises are clever, because surprises wake up attention. The brain constantly predicts. When the prediction is broken, attention appears. I call this the prediction break. The prediction break, the moment reality differs from expectation, and that's where curiosity lives. The dermatologist says this skincare habit might be making your acne worse. Interestingly, a cardiologist says one heart symptom most people completely ignore. Interesting. A pediatrician says this mistake parents make when fevers start. Interesting. You notice something? None of those started with education. They started with discovery. The lesson comes later. And before anyone worries, this is not clickbait. Very important distinction. Clickbait creates curiosity, then disappoints. Discovery creates curiosity, then delivers. Huge difference. Patients hate clickbait. Patients love discoveries because discoveries create learning. Okay, now let's go deeper, because another strange thing happens. When curiosity appears, patients become active participants, not passive viewers. Massive difference. Instead of receiving information, they begin searching for answers. They start thinking, they start predicting, they start engaging mentally. And mentally engaged people retain more information. That's why discovery improves education, not weakens it. I call this the curiosity engine. Curiosity creates attention. Attention creates retention. Retention creates trust. Trust creates patience. Simple, right? Most doctors focus only on trust, but trust has prerequisites. Attention comes first, retention comes second, then trust. Now, let's talk about something thrilling, because I genuinely think this changes everything. Most doctor believes patient choose doctor based on expertise alone. Partially true, but expertise only matters after attention. Nobody can trust expertise they never experienced. Nobody can learn from a reel they never watched. The opening line determines whether the expertise gets a chance or not. And that's why it's so important. Let's think about consultation. A great doctor does not immediately dump information. A great doctor creates engagement. Ask questions. create connection, build attention, then educates. The best reel follows the same psychology. Different environment, same human brain. Here's a warning, because every powerful idea gets misunderstood. The goal is not becoming dramatic. The goal is not becoming sensational. The goal is not pretending everything is shocking. Patients see through that instantly. The goal is finding genuine discoveries, real discoveries, useful discoveries, relevant discoveries. That's enough. And honestly, medical is full of discoveries. Every specialty has them, every clinic has them, every patient conversation contains them. The raw material already exists. Most doctors simply don't recognize it yet. Once you start looking, you see discoveries are everywhere. Every myth, every misunderstanding, every common mistake, every overlooked symptom, every patient assumption, they are all openings. And here's where things become exciting. Because one patient stay longer, everything improves. Watch time improves, retention improves, shares improves, saves improves, reach improves, trust improves, patient inquiries improves. It all started with attention, right? Not because Instagram is magical, because human psychology is predictable. Okay, let me leave you with a picture. Imagine it's a 6 months from now, you post a reel. The opening line immediately grabs attention. Patients stop scrolling. They stay, they listen, they learn, they share, they save. The algorithm notices. Distribution expands. More patients discover you. More patients trust you. More patients walk into your clinic already familiar with you. And while other doctors continue starting with explanations, you will start with discoveries. You will create curiosity first, education second, trust third, and over time, all those small changes create something remarkable. More reach, more influencers, more patients. Because the doctors who understand opening lines don't just get attention, they get the opportunity to educate. And the doctors who master the opportunity will go viral, will build trust, and will get patients from Instagram. And it all started with the first few words. This is the next part. This is generally one of my favorite things to teach, because hooks, right? Hooks everything. I don't care how good your medical advice is. I don't care how many years you have been practicing. If the hook doesn't work, none of this matters, because nobody ever sees the rest of the video. The hook is the gatekeeper. The hook is the bouncer at the door. And today I am going to give you 5 proven hook types that doctors are using right now to go genuinely fast. Viral, like literally fast. Let's get into it. Here's the thing about hooks that I think gets misunderstood constantly. People think a hook is a clear line, a clever line, something witty, something punchy. No, a hook is a psychological trigger. It's a specific mechanism that does a specific job in the brain in the first 2 seconds. Different hooks do different job. Some hooks pull someone in with story. Some hooks promise a fast outcome. Some hooks works because they tapped into something universal. Some hooks build authority. And some hooks turns a single viewer into someone who watches 5, 10, 15 of your videos in rows. Today, we are going through all 5, one at a time, in detail, because I want you walking away from this with actual usable hooks for your specialty, not just theory. Hook 1, the story hook. A story hook grabs your audience in first 2 seconds by dropping them right into a real patient scenario, a personal shift you experienced, a meaningful moment. The reason this works is simple. Human brains are wired for narratives, not facts, not bullet points, stories. We are wired for, and then this happened. That's how attention works. It's how it works for basically all human history. Example, cardiologists. The habit that built confidence is detecting early heart issues. Immediately your brains ask, what habit? Why did it matter? How did it help? Pediatrician. The single decision that changed my approach to child nutrition. Again, what decision? What changed? Why was it important? Endocrinologist. The only thing that changed how I see obesity. Again, what's that one thing? What happened? What changed? Every one of these drop you into middle of the story that's already moving, and your brain wants the rest. Important observation. None of these hooks says, let me tell you a story. That's actually a hook killer. Because the moment you say, let me tell you a story, people assume something slow is coming and then they scroll. Instead, drop them directly into a moment, usually structured like the habit that, the decision that, the things that. They are already inside the story because they even realized it. Doctor Creator Toolkit, coming up with story hooks consistently is difficult. That's why inside the Doctor Creator Toolkit, we build 30 storytelling formulas, not example, actual formulas, filling the blank structures. You bring experience, the formula provides the structure. Hook 2, the conversion hook. This hook uses a completely different mechanism. Story hooks create curiosity, conversion hook creates action. A conversion hook promises a clear outcome, a useful insight, a practical takeaway. The second someone sees it, they don't just watch it, they save it, they share it because it feels useful. Example, dermatologist. The real reason why your acne isn't clearing. This isn't a story. There is a known narrative. It's a direct promise. This is a reason, and I'm about to tell you what is it. Dentist, the most common mistakes I see in brushing. Again, specific, practical, useful. General practitioners, the first thing to fix if you want better sleep. Again, direct, actionable, immediate value. Pattern, notice the language. The real reason is the most common mistakes. The first thing to fix. All of these are signals, specificity, usefulness, and practical value. That's exactly why they get saved. Because people think I need this later. And then they get shared because people think my friend needs this. That's free distribution, free reach, free exposure. Inside the toolkit, you will find conversion reel frameworks, conversion focused hooks, conversion focused structures, conversion focused examples across multiple specialities. Hook 3, the evergreen hook. This hook works for a completely different reason. Evergreen hooks work because they tap into universal human concerns, things every person care about. Example, health, longevity, appearances, prevention, sleep, energy. These topics never expire. Example, general practitioner. The habit that changes everything, sleep discipline. Dentist, the simple habit that prevents gum bleeding. General practitioners, the simple truth about long-term health, awareness matters. These hooks work because they remain relevant today, next month, next year. Why evergreen hook matters? A trend might last 1 week, 2 weeks. An evergreen reel can continue generating views for months, sometimes years. That's the real power. Evergreen content compounds. Trend content expires. Inside the Doctor Creator Toolkit, you will find 25 evergreen content formats. Ready to use structures built around topics your patient will always care about. Hook 4, the enterprise hook. This hook positions you as a doctor who knows what others miss. Example, general doctor. The red flag I look for in every patient, low hydration. Gastrologist. The first thing I notice when someone has a gut issue. Endocrinologist. The one truth I tell every patient about sugar. Notice what's happening. You're demonstrating expertise, not claiming expertise. That's a massive difference. Most doctors talk about credentials. These hooks showcase pattern recognition, and the pattern recognition is what real expertise look like. Instead of saying I have been practicing for 15 years, you show people how you think, and that's far more powerful. Inside the Doctor Creator Toolkit, you will find Show Your Expertise Technique, a framework designed specifically to help doctors create authority building content consistently. Hook 5, the serious hook. This might be the most powerful hook type of all 5 because it creates bingeable content. Think Netflix. Someone who watched one episode, then another, then another, then another. That's exactly what a series hook creates. One video becomes 10, 10 video becomes 20, 20 becomes 30, and Instagram loves that because binge behavior signals quality. Series structure 1. The truth no one shares about. Pediatricians. The truth no one shares about repeated colds in children. Dermatologist. The truth no one shares about acne that keeps coming back. Gynecologist. The truth no one shares about PCOS symptoms doctor often overlook. Nutritionist. The truth no one shares about weight loss plateaus. Psychiatrist. The truth no one shares about high functioning anxiety. One structure, multiple specialties, unlimited content ideas. Series structure 2. The best thing you can do for your dash daily. Pediatricians. The best thing you can do for your child's immunity daily. Dermatologist. The best thing you can do for your skin barrier daily. General practitioners. The best thing you can do for your heart health daily. Nutritionist. The best thing you can do for your metabolism daily. Orthopedic surgeon. The best thing you can do for your joints daily. Again, one work, infinite applications. Series structure 3. The hidden connection between dash and dash. Gynecologist. The hidden connection between stress and painful periods. Cosmetic surgeon. The hidden connection between inflammation and slow healing after surgery. Cosmetic surgeon, the hidden connection between sleep quality and natural looking surgical results. Neurologist, the hidden connection between gut bacteria and migraines. Psychiatrist, the hidden connection between screen time and emotional instability. Unexpected connections create curiosity. Curiosity creates attention. Attention creates views. Why series hooks are so powerful? Endless variation, one structure, dozens of topic. Build curiosity. People start anticipating the next post. Build authority. Consistent teams create expertise. Creates long-term conversions. People return repeatedly. Trust grows. Appointment flow. High searchable. Each piece stands on its own. Massive leverage. One structure can create 30 plus posts. That's an enormous return from a single idea. Inside the Doctor Creator Toolkit, you will find latest trend series, complete breakdowns, complete frameworks, ready to use examples. Let's log this in. Story hooks creates curiosity through narrative, supported by 30 storytelling formulas. Conversion hooks creates saves, shares, and action, supported by conversion reel framework. Evergreen hooks create content that stay relevant, supported by 25 evergreen content formats. Expertise hook build authority through pattern recognition, supported by show your expertise technique. Series hook create binge-worthy content and long-term growth, supported by latest trend series. Most doctors are using maybe one of these hook types, usually by accident. Without realizing, there are four more sitting right in front of them. Now you have all five: story, conversion, evergreen, expertise, series. Every hook type currently work on Instagram for doctors, broken down, explained, and ready to use. This is exactly why the Doctor Creator Toolkit exists, not just to give you ideas, but to give you systems, the storytelling formula, the conversion framework, the evergreen formats, the expertise technique, the series frameworks, the C5 formula, the 365-day content calendar. Everything works together in one place. Instead of asking, what should I post this week? You'll exactly know what to post, how to hook attention, how to build trust, how to drive action. So here's what I would say. Stop guessing, stop hoping, stop creating content randomly. Get the Doctor Creator Toolkit, get all 5 hook frameworks, get every system, get every template, get everything in one place. Click the link below, grab the Doctor Creator Toolkit and start posting hooks that actually convert. Most patients decide whether to keep you watching in under 8 seconds. Not because they understand medicine, not because they checked your qualification, not because they researched your experience. Something else happens first. And once I discovered this, a lot of doctor content suddenly made sense. Right? Because most doctors believe patients watch content the way doctors consume information, logically, carefully, step by step. Patients don't, humans don't, including doctors, right? Here's what's interesting. The first 8 seconds are not about education. They are about a decision, a very simple decision. Is this for me? That's it. Nothing more complicated. Before patients care about the answer, they want to know if questions belong to them. And that's where most doctors lose people. Okay, I call this the relevance test. The relevance test. Every patient runs it every single time without realizing it, without consciously thinking about it. The brain asks, should I continue or should I scroll? And that decision happens frighteningly fast. And now here's the funny part. Most doctors don't fail because they are boring. They fail because they are helpful too early. I know that sounds ridiculous, but stay with me. A doctor starts a reel. Vitamin D is very important for health. Helpful, accurate, educational, and patients disappear. Not because it's wrong, because the brain hasn't passed the relevance test yet. The patient is still wondering, why should I care, right? The education arrived before the relevance. That's backwards. Okay. And once you understand this, you stop looking at content as content. You start looking at content as a patient psychology. Huge difference, right? I found something fascinating. Doctors change their behavior much faster when shown patient psychology, much faster than content rules. Tell a doctor, use a stronger hook. Nothing changes. Tell a doctor, patient decides relevance before information. Everything changes because now we are talking about human behavior, no content tricks. Okay, I call this category conditioning. Patients have been trained by internet, not by doctors, not by hospitals, by thousands of pieces of content every day. The brain has learned shortcuts, very efficient shortcuts, right? Imagine you're scrolling on Instagram, a reel appears, the brain immediately tries to categorize into important, relevant, not relevant, for me, not for me. This happens before conscious thoughts. And that's the crazy part. And patients do exactly the same thing with doctors. Okay. Now, let's make this practical. Imagine a dermatologist start a reel. Acne is a common skin condition, technically correct, but the patient brain is still searching for relevance, searching for connection, searching for itself. Now, compare it to this. If you're getting acne, despite trying multiple treatments, suddenly something changed. The brain finds itself, the relevant tests get passed, and attention stays, right? Same doctor, same knowledge, different psychology. And psychology always win. Okay, now let's talk about something doctors secretly hate: entertainment, right? Whenever I say entertainment, some doctors become uncomfortable. They immediately imagine dancing, pointing at text, lip syncing a song, making jokes. That's not what I mean at all, right? The best educational content is entertaining, not because it's silly, because it's engaging. Big difference. A textbook can be educational. Nobody binge watches textbook. Patients need attention before they can receive education. Attention comes first. Education comes second. And I call this the education bridge. The education bridge, you cannot educate someone who already scrolled away. Simple, obvious, and somehow ignored by most experts. Okay, let's use a clinic example. Imagine a patient enters your clinic. Before explaining treatment, would you first make sure they understand why they are there? Of course, you establish context, you understand symptoms, you create relevance, then you explain. Content works exactly the same way, right? But online, the process happens in seconds, not minutes. That's why the first few moments matter so much. Here's another discovery. Patients are not looking for information, they are looking for answers. Massive difference. Doctors love information, patients love solution. Doctors think I need to explain everything. Patients think, can someone explain my problem? Different goals, right? And when those goals don't align, retention disappears. The patient leaves. Not because you're wrong, because you're solving a different problem. I call this the answer gap. The answer gap, the distance between what doctors want to explain and what patient wants to know. The smaller gap, the stronger the engagement. The larger gap, the faster they leave. Now let's have some fun. Imagine a patient scrolling Instagram at night. They are lying in bed, one eye open, half asleep, thinking about work tomorrow, thinking about their children, thinking about bills, thinking about life. Then suddenly, reel appears. Do you think they are ready for a medical lecture? Absolutely not. They are ready for one thing: relevance. That's it. The brain is basically saying, give me a reason to care. That's the entire first 8 seconds. Not learning, not diagnosis, not treatment, just relevance. Okay, and once relevance is established, everything becomes easier. Education becomes easier, trust becomes easier, retention becomes easier, patient acquisition becomes easier, because the door is finally open. This is where most doctors accidentally sabotage themselves. They start with information instead of starting with recognition. Information feels logical, recognition feels personal. Patients respond to personal first, logic second. Think about the consultations. Patients often arrive emotional, concerned, worried, confused. And great doctors understand something important. You don't start with a textbook explanation. You start with the patient's reality. You make them feel understood. Then you educate. Content follows the exact same principle. Okay, I call this the understood first principle. The understood first principle. Patients trust doctors who understand them before they trust doctors who educate them. That's not disrespecting to expertise. That's how humans work. Now here's a warning. Because every powerful idea gets misunderstood, the goal isn't manipulation. The goal isn't clickbait. The goal isn't tricking patients. The goal is matching human psychology. Very different. When patients stop watching after 3 seconds, nobody wins. Not the patient, not the doctor, not the platform, nobody. When patients stay longer, education actually happens. That's the payoff. Here's what we noticed. The highest performing doctor content usually begins with a patient's reality, not a medical fact. A patient reality, a frustration, a symptom, a fear, a misunderstanding. Something recognizable, then education follows. And suddenly, watch time improves. Engagement improves. Trust improves. Because the brain feels safe. The brain feels understood. The brain decides this is for me. And once that happens, the patient stays. Okay, let's go even deeper because something fascinating helps after the relevance test. The patient begins predicting value. The brain asks another question. If the beginning was useful, what else I might learn? That's where curiosity appears. Not artificial curiosity, natural curiosity. I call this the value prediction loop. The value prediction loop, strong relevance create value prediction. Value prediction creates attention. Attention creates learning. Learning creates trust. That's the sequence, right? Most doctor try skipping steps. That's why result feels inconsistent. Okay, now think about this. The best doctor inside clinics are usually great communicators, not just great clinicals, just communicators, because patients don't experience knowledge directly, they experience explanations. As we move into 2026 and beyond, that becomes even more important because patients are spending more time online, researching more, comparing more, learning more, watching more. The doctors who understand patient psychology will have a huge advantage. Not because they are better marketers, because they are better communicators. Huge distinction. Okay, and honestly, I think this is one of the most biggest shift happening right now. The best doctors of the future won't just understand medicine, they'll understand attention, they'll understand trust, they'll understand human behavior. Because that's where patient decision begins. Not inside the clinic, before the clinic, on screen, during searches, during scorings, during tiny moments of curiosity. That's where the relationship starts now. Let me leave you with a picture. Imagine it's a year from now. You post a reel, patients don't scroll away. They stay, they watch, they save, they share, not because you became entertaining, because you became understandable. Patients feel seen immediately. The relevance test gets passed, the educational bridge gets crossed, trust begins forming before consultations. And while other doctors are still asking, why aren't people watching? You'll understand exactly what's happening inside the patient's head in the first 8 seconds. And that understanding will quietly separate you from everyone else. Because the doctors who understand patients' psychology will become the most trusted doctor in 2026 and beyond. Not because they know more medicine, because they know how humans decide. And that's where everything else changes. Most doctors accidentally make patients trust them less. Not because they are saying wrong things, because they are trying to talk to everyone. And that's the weird part. The doctor who speaks to fewer people usually attracts more patients. That sounds backwards. It sounded backward to me too. But after watching hundreds of doctors' accounts, I found the same pattern again and again. The doctors trying to reach everybody rarely felt memorable. The doctor speaking to one exact patient felt trustworthy immediately. And here's what interesting. Nothing changed about qualifications. Nothing changed about their expertise. Nothing changed about their degrees. Only the way they spoke changed. That's it. I call this the specificity effect. And once you see it, you can't unsee it, right? Let's start with what most doctors do. A doctor turns on the camera, then says something like, today I'm going to talk about skin problems, or let's discuss hair loss, or many people suffer from acne. Sounds reasonable, sounds professional, sounds safe, sounds broad. And that's exactly the problem. It's so broad that nobody feels seen. Nobody thinks that's me. Because everybody assumes it's for somebody else. Now compare that to this. If you are a woman in your 30s and you have tried 3 acne treatments already, but the pigmentation keeps returning, listen carefully. Immediately different. Same doctor, same expertise, same medical knowledge. And suddenly it feels so personal. It feels relevant. It feels trustworthy. Why? Because the specificity creates recognition and the recognition creates trust. That's the entire game, okay? I call this the recognition trigger. The recognition trigger, the moment a patient says, that's exactly what's happening to me, trust begins. Not after consultation, before the consultation. And this is where most doctors make a huge mistake. They believe talking broadly increases reach. Makes sense. If everybody can relate, more patients should come. That's what logic says. Reality says the opposite because the broad messaging creates weak relevance. Specific messaging creates strong relevance, and the strong relevance wins every single time. I remember working with a doctor who kept saying, "But I treat everyone." Fair point. Most doctors do. Children, adults, men, women, different conditions, different symptoms, different backgrounds. But here's what we discovered: patients don't trust doctors who treat everyone. Patients trust doctors who understand them. Big difference. You may help everybody, but patients need to feel understood individually, and those are not the same thing. So basically, the goal isn't proving you can treat everyone. The goal is helping one person feel seen. Then everybody else watching assumes you'll understand them too. That's the weird psychological shortcut. Let's talk about how patients actually consume content, because doctors imagine patient watching logically. Patients don't. Nobody does. People scroll emotionally, they justify logically later. That's how human works. A patient isn't asking, is this doctor qualified? At least not initially. They are asking, does this doctor understand my problem? That question comes first. Qualifications come second. Trust comes from understanding. Then expertise validates it. Think about your own behavior. Open a YouTube, you see 2 videos. One says fitness advice, the other says why skinny men struggle to gain muscle. Which one feels more relevant? The second one. If you are not skinny, if you are not trying to gain muscle, the specificity grabs attention. That's the pattern interrupt. Write down that. The pattern interrupt. Specific language interrupts scrolling. Broad language blends in. Patients ignore broad. Patients notice specific. Okay, now here's where it gets really interesting. Let's say you're a dermatologist. You create a reel, 5 skincare mistakes. Decent. Nothing wrong with it. Now let's change one line. 5 skincare mistake women with oily skin make during summer. Suddenly it feels different. The audience became smaller, but engagement becomes bigger. Trust becomes stronger. Retention becomes longer. And here's the funny part: people outside the audience still watch because specificity feels expertise, broadness feels generic, specificity feels experience. That's the reframing. You're not reducing your audience, you're increasing the perceived expertise. Huge difference. Most doctors hear narrowing, patients hear specialization. That's why this works. And before you think, I don't want to exclude patients, let's handle that immediately. Because almost every doctor thinks this. The fear sounds like this: if I speak to one group, won't everybody else leave? Reasonable concern, completely understandable. And completely wrong, because patients are not listening literally, they are listening for patterns. A patient thinks, if this doctor understands that problem so deeply, they'll probably understand mine too. That's how trust transfer. I call this the expertise transfer effect. The expertise transfer effect: specific trust spreads, generic trust don't. Right? Let me show you something funny. Imagine a doctor walks on a stage and says, "I treat health issues." Nobody is impressed. Now imagine another doctor says, "I help people who wake up exhausted despite sleeping 8 hours." Suddenly everyone leans forward. Same concept, different specificity, and attention changes completely. That's human psychology, not marketing. Psychology. Okay, now let's go deeper, because there's another layer most doctors miss. Specificity doesn't just increase stress, it increases memory. Patients remember specifics. Patients forget generalities. That's why some reels get saved, shared, and some doctors become memorable. Specific language creates mental hook. Broad language slides away. Think about conversations. Nobody goes home saying, I watched a video about health. People say, I watched a video about why my hair falls after dieting. Specific, memorable, repeatable, shareable. Sharing matters more than doctors realize because every share is a social proof. Every save is a future intent. Every send to friend is a trust, and platforms notice this. Instagram notices this. The algorithm notices this. People think algorithm rewards creators. Not exactly. Algorithm rewards audience behavior. Big difference. When a people save a reel, Instagram gets a signal. When people share a reel, Instagram gets another signal. When people send it privately, that's an even strong signal. The platform thinks this must be useful. Then distribution expands. Simple. Okay. So when doctors create broad content, patients consume it. Then forget it. When doctors create specific content, patients save it, share it, send it. And that's where growth happens. Not from posting more, from resonating more. I call this save and share loop. The save and share loop, specificity creates relevance, relevance creates saves, saves create reach, reach creates trust, and trust creates patience. That's the chain. And once you understand that chain, content becomes much easier because you're no longer asking, what should I post? You're asking, who exactly I'm speaking to today? Different question, much better question, right? Here's what we noticed. The strongest doctor content almost always starts the same way. Not with the disease, not with the treatment, not with the qualification. Always with the patient. If you are a new mother, if you are struggling with acne after pregnancy, if you are noticing thinning hair after weight loss, if your child gets repeated skin infections, immediately specific, immediately relatable, immediately trustworthy, because patients care about themselves first, then diagnosis, not the other way around. That's just the normal human nature. And here's the warning, because every insight has a trap. The trap is fake specificity. Very important. Some doctors hear this, then create absurdly narrow content. That's not the point. The goal isn't limiting reach. The goal is increasing recognition. Big difference. You're trying to create identification, not exclusions. You want patients saying, that's me, not this isn't for me. Subtle distinction, massive impact. So basically, trust doesn't begin when patients enter your clinic. Trust begins when patients recognize themselves in your content. That's the weird thing. The thing nobody teaches doctor. The thing most creators miss. The thing patients never consciously notice. But it changes everything. And once you start looking for it, you'll see it everywhere. The most trusted doctor use specificity. The most shared content use specificity. The most saved content uses specificity. The most memorable content uses specificity. Not because specificity is clever, because specificity feels true, and the truth creates trust. Okay, let me leave you with a picture. Imagine it's 3 months from now. You open Instagram, a reel you posted last week is still growing. Patients are sharing it. Patients are saving it. Patients are sending it to family groups. Your staff starts hearing something interesting. Patients keep saying, I saw your video. Not just one patient, many patients. They walk into consultations already familiar with you, already comfortable, already trusting you. And the strange part, the reels getting the most attention are not broad. They are incredibly specific. One problem, one patient type, one frustration, one solution. And because those reels get more shares, they spread further. Because they spread further, more patients discover you. Because more patients discover you, trust compounds. And one day, another doctor asks, how are your reels getting so much engagement? And you're smiling. Because the answer wasn't talking to everyone. The answer was finally talking to one person clearly enough. And somehow that made everybody listen. If you're anything like dermatologist I speak to, you probably have mixed feelings about Instagram. Part of you sees other dermatologists getting patients from it. Part of you sees reels with millions of views. Part of you hears stories. But another part of you thinks doctors should not promote themselves. Medicine is not marketing. If I'm good, patients should come through referrals, right? That's exactly where this dermatologist was. And that's why I want to tell you her story. Because she didn't start as a creator, she didn't enjoy being on camera, she wasn't trying to become famous. She just wanted more patients walking into her clinic. That's it. And what happened over the next 90 days completely changed how she thought about Instagram. And honestly, it changed how I think about patient acquisition too. Here's what interesting. When we first spoke, her clinic wasn't empty. She had patients, but growth was slow, very referral dependent, very unpredictable. 1 month would be okay, another month would be quiet, and every week felt like starting again. You know that feeling, right? Where the calendar looks decent and then suddenly there are gaps. Then you would wonder where the next patients are coming from. Then somebody says you should try Instagram, and your immediate reaction is no, because that's exactly what happened. Lots of resistance, not a little resistance, a lot. Her belief was simple: doctors should not be part of Instagram. Good doctors shouldn't need promotion. Patients should come because of expertise, not because of content. And honestly, I understand that concern because most doctors are not afraid of Instagram. They are afraid of becoming entertainers. Big difference, right? Nobody spent years studying medicine to dance on reels. Nobody. So we made one discovery very early. The problem wasn't Instagram. The problem was how doctors were looking at Instagram. Most people see Instagram as social media. Patients see Instagram as a research tool. That's completely a different game. I call this the social proof engine. Write that down. The social proof engine. Because that's what changed everything. The goal wasn't views, followers, and becoming famous. The goal was creating enough proof that a patient feels comfortable messaging. That's it. And once she understood that, she agreed to start. Reluctantly, very reluctantly, right? The first videos were simple. Questions patients already asked every day. Acne, pigmentation, hair loss, sunscreen myths. Nothing revolutionary. No viral tricks. No fancy editing. No expensive equipment. Just clarity. And here's the funny part. First few weeks were underwhelming. Really underwhelming. Because most doctors think content works like an injection. You post and patients arrive tomorrow. And that's how everyone secretly expects it to work. It doesn't. Content works more like farming. You plant, you wait, you keep planting, then suddenly everything grows at once. The first month, around 5 inquiries per day. Not bad, but not life-changing. And if we are being honest, 5 inquiries per day isn't enough to convince most doctors, especially skeptical doctors, right? Because at that stage, brain starts talking. Maybe this doesn't work. Maybe referrals are better. Maybe this is a waste of time. And here's the dangerous part. Most doctors quit right there. Not because content failed, because they judged it too early. I call this day 30 trap. The day 30 trap. Most doctors stop at exactly the point where results are starting because they mistake the beginning for the outcome, right? So she kept going. Not because she suddenly became convinced. She wasn't convinced. She was still skeptical. But she continued. And that decision changed everything. Month 2 arrived. Average inquiries climbed to 18 per day. Now that's a very different conversation, right? 18 inquiries every day without referrals, without networking events, depending on other doctors sending patients, running around trying to build awareness manually. And yet, even then, she wasn't fully convinced. Which sounds crazy, but it's actually normal because human beings trust their old beliefs even when evidence starts showing up, right? And her old belief was Instagram isn't for doctors. So every result had to fight against years of conditioning. But she kept posting, and that's where the real lesson begins. Around day 70, something strange happened. Messages started appearing from people who never interacted before. People booking consultations, asking treatment questions, calling the clinic. And when we looked closer, we discovered something fascinating. Many of these people have been waiting for weeks. Some had watched since month 1. Some had seen multiple videos. Some had shared content with families. Some had saved videos. Some had followed silently. Then suddenly they messaged. This is why most doctors misunderstand understand content. Patients don't decide instantly. They accumulate confidence. Big difference, right? I call this the trust bank. Every reel makes a deposit. Every explanation makes a deposit. Every myth busted makes a deposit. Every patient concern addressed makes a deposit. And one day, the balance becomes large enough. Then the patient acts. Not because of one reel, because of 20. Not because of one video, because of 20 months of evidence. So basically, month 1 created awareness, month 2 created familiarity, month 3 created action, and that's where the compound effect appeared. The social proof engine finally kicked into full speed. The people who saw her in month 1 started messaging in month 3. The people who discovered her in month 2 started booking consultations. The people who were silently watching started becoming patients. And suddenly, the clinic had a completely different problem. Too many inquiries, right? Which is a much better problem. The phone started ringing constantly, Instagram DMs increased, WhatsApp messages increased, staff started spending more time responding. The clinic actually needed help handling incoming inquiries. Think about that. Just pause for a second. The same doctor who initially believed doctors should not be on Instagram now needed assistance because of Instagram. That's a dramatic shift, right? And by the end of the third month, average inquiries reached 42. Not views, not likes, not followers, inquiries. Potential patients. People actively interested. That's the metric that matters. Okay, and here's the myth nobody talks about. Most doctors think promotion damages credibility. What we found was opposite. Bad promotion damages credibility. Education increases credibility. Huge difference. Patients were not choosing her because she promoted herself. Patients were choosing her because they understood her. Remember that. Patients always don't choose the best doctor. They choose the doctor they understand best. That's uncomfortable, but that's true. And much you understand that, Instagram start looking completely different. It's no longer a self-promotion. It's patient education at scale. One explanation, hundreds of patients understand it. One myth busted, thousands of people become informed. One video, months of trust building compressed, right? That's why I keep coming back to the social proof engine, because every reel answers a question before the consultation. Every reel reduces uncertainty, lowers patient anxiety, increases familiarity. And familiarity creates trust, not instantly, over time. That's the part most people miss. The delay, the lag, the invisible period. The period where you're working but results seem small. I call it the silent build phase. And nearly every successful doctor goes through it because patients are watching long before they act, right? Think about your own behavior. When you buy something important, do you decide instantly? Usually not. You research, compare, watch, and think. Patients do exactly the same thing. Except now, they are researching doctors through content. That's the shift. Whether we like it or not, whether we practice it or not. Patients are already doing it, right? So the question isn't, should doctors be on Instagram? The question is, who will patients find when they search? Because somebody will be there. And if that somebody isn't you, it's another dermatologist. Simple, okay? Now let's talk about what happened 3 months later. Because this is the part that really stayed with me. The inquiry volume became predictable. Patient acquisition became predictable. The clinic became less dependent on referrals. You start making different decisions. You hire differently, you plan differently, you invest differently, you think differently. And eventually, she had enough confidence to consider opening another clinic. Think about the progression. Started with, doctors should not be on Instagram. Ended with, I'm confident enough to expand. That's not a social media story. That's a business transformation story, right? And my favorite part happened much later because people always ask successful doctors the same question. What changed? What are you doing differently? How are you getting patients? And eventually, she found herself speaking to fellow dermatologists. The exact same conversations she once had. The exact same objections, same skepticism, same doubts. And now she was the one smiling, saying Instagram is actually very good. Not because she became a marketer, because she experienced the result. She saw the patient's journey. She was trust compound. She saw the social proof engine work. And that's the future pacing lesson I want you to leave with. Imagine it's 90 days from now. You walk into your clinic, the phones are active, messages are coming in, your staff already knows how to handle inquiries, patients mention your videos during consultations, new patients arrive already trusting you, referrals still happen, but they are no longer carrying the entire clinic. And later that evening, you're having coffee with another dermatologist. They tell you, I don't think doctors should be on Instagram. And you smile because that's exactly what you used to think. Then you tell them about the inquiries, consultations, patients, growth. And you hear yourself saying something you never thought you would say. Instagram is actually one of the best thing ever you did. That's what happened here. And that's what becomes possible when social proofs compounds long enough. There's something else most doctors misunderstand. They think they are competing against other doctors. They are not, at least not initially. The first thing you are competing against is doubt. Think about it. A patient sees your video, they like your explanation, they agree with what you're saying, they even follow your page. And then nothing happens. No inquiry, no booking, no consultations. Why? Most doctors assume the patient wasn't interested. But often that's not true. The patient was interested. The patient was simply uncertain and suddenly delays action. The patient thinks maybe this doctor is right, but maybe there's someone better. Maybe I should look around. Maybe I should wait. Maybe I should get another opinion. Notice what happened? The patient didn't reject the doctor. The patient postponed the decision. And the postponed decisions are usually caused by doubts. This is why some doctors get frustrated. They believe they are educating patients. They believe they are creating useful content. They believe they are doing everything correctly. And they are. But education alone isn't enough. The patient still needs certainty. The patient still needs confidence. The patient still needs the reason to stop searching. And that's where the great doctor separates themselves. They remove doubt before the patient starts comparing alternatives. Let me give you a simple example. Imagine you're traveling in a city you never visited before. You're hungry, you search for restaurants. Two restaurants appears. The first restaurant says, serving customers since 1998. Good information, personal information, useful information. The second restaurant says, if you are looking for authentic Hyderabadi biryani that's flavorful without being overwhelming spicy, this is for you. Now think about your reaction. Which restaurant feels more relevant? Which restaurant feels like it understands exactly what you're looking for? Most people choose the second one, not because it has better food, not because it has better chefs, because it removed uncertainty. It answered a question that was already inside your head. The same thing happens with patients. Patients aren't looking for information. They are looking for reassurance that they are in right place. And the doctors who provide that reassurance become the obvious choice. The patient who never books. Now let me tell you a story. Imagine a patient discovers a doctor content. They watch one video, then another, then another. Eventually they have watched 20 videos. They follow the page, they visit the website, they know the doctor's qualifications, they understand the doctor approach, and yet they never book. How is that possible? The doctor provided education, the doctor provided value. So why didn't the patient take action? Because information answered their questions, but it didn't remove their doubt. The patient still wasn't completely sure. They still didn't know whether this doctor was right for this specific situation. And that's an important distinction. Patients don't need perfect certainty, but they do need enough certainty to stop looking elsewhere. When that certainty doesn't exist, they continue searching, they continue comparing, they continue delaying. And that's exactly why some highly educated doctors still struggle to attract patients consistently. The problem isn't knowledge, the problem is doubt. Now let's talk about what happens when doubt disappears. Because something fascinating happens. The doctor doesn't become the best doctor, the doctor becomes the obvious doctor. And those are very different things. Think about your own decisions. When you're absolutely certain about something, do you keep searching? Usually not. You stop, you decide, you move forward. Patients behave exactly the same way. When you feel certain a doctor understands them, they stop comparing, they stop searching, they stop looking for alternatives. The decision becomes easy. This is why the goal isn't becoming the most famous doctor. The goal isn't becoming the most visible doctor. The goal isn't becoming the most entertaining doctor. The goal is becoming the most obvious choice. The doctor who feels right, the doctor who feels relevant, the doctor who feels like the answer, and that happens when doubt disappears. So let's come back to the title of this lesson. The line that positions you as the only logical choice. The most people hear that title and think this must be a marketing lesson. It isn't. It's a psychology lesson, because positioning is really just doubt removal. When a patient hears a sentence and thinks this doctor understands exactly what I am experiencing, something changes. Trust increases, confidence increases, resistance decreases, and the decision becomes easier. That single moment matters more than most doctors realize, because patients don't need another doctor explaining symptoms. Patients need a doctor who make them feel understood. And that feeling often begins with a single sentence. A sentence that describes them, their struggle, their reality. The moment that happens, doubt starts disappearing. Now let's talk about what this means going forward. Because once you understand this lesson, you'll never look at content same way again. Most doctors create content with one goal: share information. But information isn't the goal. The goal is certainty, trust. The goal is helping patients feel confident that they are in the right place. So before you create any future reel, ask yourself one question. What doubt is this reducing? Not what information am I sharing? Not how much value am I giving? Not will this get views? Ask yourself, what doubt is this removing? Because every great piece of content does exactly that. It removes uncertainty, confusion, hesitation. And when hesitation disappears, decisions become easier. So let me leave you with one final thought. Patients don't choose doctors because they are impressed. Patients choose doctors because they feel certain. And certainty is created when doubt disappears. That's why some doctors attract patients more consistently than others. Not because they are smarter, not because they are better marketers, not because they are more entertaining, because they are better at helping patients feel understood. They answer the invisible question faster. They remove the doubt faster. And once doubt disappears, the decision becomes easy. So if you remember only one thing from this lesson, remember this. Patients don't choose the doctor who provides the most information. They choose the doctor who removes the most doubt. And the doctors who understand that becomes the obvious choice long before the patient ever books an appointment. The studio you were waiting for is already in your pocket. That's the discovery. Not a new camera, not a new light, not a new microphone, not a new room. Your phone. That's it. And I know exactly what some doctors are thinking. Easy for you to say. My videos should look professional. I need a proper lighting. I need a clean setup. I need a better background. I need a podcast style room. I need a right equipment. I hear this constantly. And honestly, it sounds reasonable until you look at the evidence. Because here's what's interesting. You already disapproved the belief earlier. You did it yourself, not me. You. Think back to the exercise we just did. No studio, no production team, no expensive equipments, no dedicated room, no fancy setup. You built a reel. Maybe not a perfect reel, maybe not a polished reel, but a reel. That's important because the biggest block are not removed by information, they are removed by proof. I call this the self-proof effect. The self-proof effect when your own experience destroy a limiting belief. And that's exactly what happened. Nobody convinced you, nobody debated you, nobody argued with you. You simply experienced something and suddenly old beliefs became weaker. Let's talk about the equipments for a minute. Because equipments is one of the most expensive form of procrastinations. Not fancy expensive, no financial expensives, psychological expensive. Huge difference. People say, I start after I buy the equipment. Then they buy the equipment. Then they say, I'll start after I learn the equipment. Then they learn the equipment. Then they say, I'll start after I improve the setup, and somehow content never appears. I call this the equipment loop. The equipment loop, the belief that better tools create action, when usually action comes first, then better tools. Think about this. Most doctors are not waiting for equipments. They are waiting for certainty. The equipments just sounds more practical because I need a microphone feels better than saying I am nervous to start. That's completely human. Everybody does that. Creators do this, entrepreneurs do this, business owners do this, doctors do this. The brain looks for a technical problem because technical problem feels solvable. Identity problems feels uncomfortable. Now, here's what we noticed. Patients rarely reject useful information because of camera quality. Think about your own behavior. You have probably watched videos with terrible lighting, terrible audio, terrible background, and still watched till the end because the information mattered. I call this the value override. The value override when useful information becomes more important than production quality. And the healthcare is one of the strongest examples. If somebody has a health concern, they care about answers, not ring lights. They care about clarity, not camera lenses. They care about understanding, not studio aesthetics. Now, before anyone misunderstands me, quality is nice, good lighting is nice, good audio is nice, professional presentation is nice. Nothing wrong with any of it. The mistake is believing those things are prerequisites. They are enhancement, not prerequisites. Huge distinction. Let's compare two doctors. Dr. A spent 3 months building a studio, choosing a lights, choosing microphones, choosing backgrounds, choosing furnitures, choosing cameras, then post nothing. Dr. B takes out a phone, record useful content, post consistently. Who wins? The answer isn't even close because patients cannot consume intention. Patients can only consume content. And here's something funny. The internet is full of evidence. Some of the most viewed videos are ever made look surprisingly simple, not because quality doesn't matter, because value matters more. The audience forgives production flaws. The audience does not forgive relevance. That's the difference. I call this the attention law. The attention law, useful beats beautiful every single time. Beautiful and useful is wonderful, but if forced to choose, useful wins. Now let's talk about backgrounds because doctor loves backgrounds. The perfect wall, the perfect clinic, the perfect desk, the perfect bookshelf, the perfect aesthetic, the perfect setup, and somehow the perfect setup keeps moving further away. Because perfection is a moving target, you never catch it. Here's what I have found. Patients don't remember backgrounds. Patients remember explanations. Patients don't remember lighting. Patients remember insights. Patients don't remember microphones. Patients remember clarity. Think about the content you consume. You probably remember ideas, not equipment. And this is where things become interesting. The desire for better equipment often comes from a good place. Doctors want credibility, professionalism, trust. Completely understandable. But trust is usually earned through competence, not production. Huge difference. I call this the credibility myth. The credibility myth. The belief that expensive production creates authority, when authority is usually created by expertise. The audience trusts doctors because of what they know, not because of what they bought. Now, let's revisit something important. Earlier, you built a reel mentally. No framework, no studio, no production, no editing, just an idea. Even though it felt incomplete, it existed. That's the key. Existence beats perfection every single time. A published reel beats an imaginary masterpiece every single time. And here's where many doctors get trapped. They compare their beginning to somebody else's 100th video. Dangerous comparison. You see polished creators, confident creators, experienced creators, and assume they started there. They did not. Nobody starts there. Like nobody. The polished version always comes later. The first version comes first. That's how reality works. I call this the creator curve. The creator curve, awkward first, comfortable later, simple first, sophisticated later, movement first, mastery later. Now let's have some fun. Imagine a patient walks into your clinic and says, I almost did not come. Interestingly, because they were waiting for a better symptom. Ridiculous. Nobody does that. Patients act with imperfect information all the time. Yet, doctors expect themselves to create with perfect preparations. Interestingly, contradictions. The standard we apply to ourselves is often much harsher. Now, here's the warning because this matters. Every month spent waiting is a month patients never discover you. Every month spent planning is a month trust never gets built. Every month spent preparing is a month visibility never compounds. The cost of waiting is invisible. That's why people underestimate it. I call this the invisible cost. The opportunities you will never see, the patients you will never find you. I call this the invisible cost. The opportunities you never see, the patients who never find you, the trust that never accumulates, the growth that never begins. And that cost gets bigger every month. So basically, the problem is not equipment. The problem is permission. Permission to start before everything else is perfect. Permission to begin before confidence arrives. Permission to create before mastery appears. And once you give yourself that permission, everything else accelerates. Because the goal isn't producing a masterpiece. The goal is producing momentum. Momentum creates improvement. Improvement creates confidence. Confidence creates consistency. Consistency creates patience. That's the sequence. And notice something? No expensive studios appear in that sequence. Interestingly, let me leave you with a picture. Imagine it's a 6 months from now. You open Instagram. You have dozens of reels published. Patients mention your content. Patients recognize your face. Patients arrive already familiar with your explanations. Your confidence on camera feels natural, not forced, not rehearsed, natural. And then you look at back. You remember the moment you almost delayed everything. because of lights, because of cameras, because of background, because of equipment. And you'll laugh because the reel that started everything was recorded on the device already sitting in your pocket. While other doctors were building studios, you were building trust. While other doctors were buying equipments, you were publishing. While other doctors were polishing, you were learning. And over time, the fast reel kept winning. The published reel kept winning. The useful reel kept winning. Because in the real world, fast reels making progress will always beat polished reels waiting for perfection. And that's when you realize the studio was never the missing piece. The last 10 seconds of your reel decide whether you get patience or just views. That's the discovery. Not the first 10 seconds, not the hook, not even the education. The last 10 seconds. And once we discovered this, a lot of doctor content suddenly became easier to understand. Because most doctors think a reel ends when information ends. Patients don't. The platform doesn't. Reality doesn't. Here's what interesting. We looked at hundreds of doctor reels, different specialities, different cities, different experience levels, different follower count. And we found a strange pattern. Most doctors spend effort on the beginning, effort on the middle, then completely abandon the ending. The final few seconds became an afterthought, almost like, oh yes, follow for more. And the reel ends. That's where the opportunity disappears. I call this the conversion moment. The conversion moment. The moment a viewer becomes something more. A follower, a lead, a patient, a consultation, a booking, a message, a phone call. Without the conversion moment, the reel becomes entertainment, maybe education, but not patient acquisition. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Views are not patients. Views are not appointments. Views are not consultations. Views are not revenue. Views are attention. That's it. Now, before anyone misunderstands me, views matter. Attention matters. Reach matters. But only if they lead somewhere. Imagine running a clinic. Patients enter, sit down, listen carefully, then leave. Nobody books. Nobody follows up. Nobody returns. Would you call that successful? Probably not. That's exactly how many doctors evaluate content. A reel get views, everybody celebrates. A reel get likes, everybody celebrates. A reel get comments, everybody celebrates. And meanwhile, patient inquiries remain unchanged. That's why I found something fascinating. Only about 6% of doctors get patients consistently from the content. The other 94% mostly get views, read that again mentally. Only 6% get patients. The other 94% get views. That's a huge gap. And the difference isn't usually medical knowledge. The difference isn't camera quality. The difference isn't editing. The difference is what happens at the end. I call this the patient path. The patient path. Every reel should answer one question. What should the patient do next? Simple, obvious, ignored. Most doctors assume patient will figure it out. Patients rarely do. Humans need direction. That's not manipulation, that's psychology. Think about hospitals. Think about airports. Think about roads. Think about elevators. Everything has signs. Everything has direction. Everything tells people what to do next because confusion kills action. Content works exactly the same way. Now, here's where things get entertaining. I ask doctors one question. What happens after somebody watches your reel? And the answer is often silence. Nobody knows because nobody planned for it. The reel was made, the information was delivered, the content was posted. Mission accomplished. Not really. The most important part just arrived. The ending, the decision point, the conversion moment. Here's a funny comparison. Imagine proposing a marriage, then ending with, anyway, follow for more. Ridiculous. Yet, exactly what many doctors' reels do. They spend 60 seconds building attention, then abandon the viewer at the finish line. No direction, no next steps, no patient pathway, nothing. And that's why I called it wasted real estate. The last 10 seconds are the most valuable property in the reel. The viewers stayed, the viewers listened, the viewers trusted you enough to continue, and then nothing happens. That's expensive. Okay, now let's handle the objection, because I know exactly what some doctors are thinking. If my content is good, patients will automatically contact me. Sounds reasonable, but human behavior doesn't work like that. People delay, people postpone, people forget, people get distracted, people intend to act later, then never do. That's why guidance matters. Not because patients are incapable, because patients are busy. Huge difference. Here's what we discovered: the doctors getting patients were doing something differently, not dramatically differently, subtly differently. They had a system, a framework, a repeatable structure, a predictable pathway. I call it the conversion bridge. The conversion bridge, the bridge between attention and action. Without the bridge, people stay viewers. With the bridge, people becomes patients. Now, here's the problem. Most doctors don't know how to build the bridge. Nobody taught them. Medical schools did not teach it, residency did not teach it, clinical experience did not teach it. So they default go to generic endings. Like this video, share this video, follow for more. Nothing wrong with those, but they rarely create patience. They create platform engagement, different outcome. And this is where the C5 formula becomes important, very important, because the C5 formula wasn't designed for views. It was designed for patient conversion. Huge distinction. The C5 formula creates a journey, a sequence, a patient pathway, a structure. Instead of hoping patients figured out what to do, the C5 formula guides them step by step, naturally. Here's what I noticed. When doctors understand patient psychology, the ending becomes obvious. Because patients are not looking for content, patients are looking for confidence, patients are looking for clarity, patients are looking for direction, and the direction usually happens at the end. Think about consultations. A consultations doesn't end with information. A consultation ends with action, test, medication, follow up, lifestyle changes, treatment plans. Something happens next, always, because information without action creates very little value. Content works exactly the same way. I call this the consultation principle. The consultation principle: every great consultation ends with clarity. Every great reel should too. Now, let's get slightly controversial, because this surprises doctors. The platform does not reward education, it rewards behavior. Very important. Patients can watch educational content all day, but when patients act, algorithm notice. When patients save, algorithm notice. When patients share, algorithm notice. When patient message, algorithm notice. Behavior matters, and that's why the ending matters. The ending influence behavior. The ending determines whether the content create movement or just consumption. Okay, now let's talk about a dangerous illusion, the viral illusion. The viral illusion says if a reel get enough views, patients will automatically come. Sometimes, but not consistently, not predictably, not reliably. The doctors building real practice through Instagram usually are not obsessed with views. They are obsessed with outcomes, patient inquiries, bookings, consultations, appointments. That's the scoreboard. And once you shift your attention there, everything changes. Content topics change, hooks change, education change, ending definitely changed, because suddenly you're asking a different question. Not will this get views, but will this create action? A much better question. Here's what I have found fascinatingly: doctors spend hours planning content, researching content, recording content, editing content, posting content, then spend almost no time planning the ending, even though the ending determines whether all that effort mattered. That's backward. It's like building a beautiful bridge, then forgetting the last few feet. Nobody reaches the destination. So basically, the CTA is not the end of the reel. The CTA is the moment the reel proves its value. the moment it justify its existence, the moment attention becomes action. That's why it matters. And if you are wondering how to structure those endings, how to create patient's pathway, how to use conversion bridge, that's exactly why the C5 formula exists. The C5 formula gives doctor a repeatable system, not for more views, for more patients. The full C5 formula is included inside the Doctor Creator Toolkit. The link to the Doctor Creator Toolkit is available in the description below. Let me leave you with a picture. Imagine it's 6 months from now. You posted a reel, views look normal, nothing dramatic, nothing viral, but your phone rings. A patient mentions your reel. A WhatsApp inquiry arrives. Then another, then another. Your staff starts recognizing a pattern. Patients keep mentioning Instagram, not because the reels went viral, because the reels created action, because the conversion movement was working, because the patient path was clear, because the C5 formula was doing its job, and meanwhile, other doctors continue collecting views, collecting likes, collecting comments, wondering why patient numbers stay the same. You'll know the difference. One group created attention, the other group created patience. And in the years ahead, the doctors who use the C5 formula will get patients. Everybody else will mostly get views. And that's why the last 10 seconds matter more than almost anybody realizes. Most doctors don't have a content problem, they have a time problem. Or at least that's what they think. I don't have time, my clinic is busy, my schedule is packed, I can't spend hours making content. I hear this constantly. And honestly, I believe it for a while. Then I started timing people, literally timing them. And something interesting happened. The objection disappeared, not because of motivation, not because of inspiration, because of stopwatch. I call this the 60-minute proof. The 60-minute proof, because a literal timer destroyed excuses faster than success stories. You can argue with options, you can argue with theories, you can argue with case studies. It's very hard to argue with a clock. Here's what we discovered. Most doctors think content creation take hours, half a day, an entire weekend. Some imagine a film production. Lights, retakes, editing, scripts, planning, stress. Reality looks completely different because the content already exists. The patients already asked the questions. The explanations already happened. The expertise already exists. You are not creating knowledge, you are documenting it. Huge difference. And once doctors understand that, everything gets easier. I call this the clinic content principle. The clinic content principle. If you have explained it in the clinic, you can explain it online. Simple. Let's walk through this. Not theoretically, literally, minute by minute. Because demonstration beats explanation. Imagine it's a Monday morning or Tuesday afternoon or Saturday evening. Doesn't matter. You block 60 minutes. 1 hour, that's it. And before we even touch the camera, let's solve the idea problem. Because many doctors think, I don't know what to post. Interestingly, because patients ask questions every day. Nobody sits in a clinic hearing silence. Questions are constantly appearing. The problem is not idea. The problem is capturing idea. I call this the idea capture system. Whenever something interestingly happens, capture it. Don't trust memories. Memory is lazy. Driving somewhere, idea appears, write it down. Showering, idea appears, writing down. Talking to a patient, interesting question appears, write it down. Open notes or your WhatsApp yourself and then type one sentence. That's enough. Not a script, not an essay, one sentence. And if you're starting from zero, you don't even need that because the 365-day content calendar already exists, built specifically for doctors. Ideas like 5 mistakes every Indian makes without realizing. Interestingly, I see this every day in my clinic. Here's the truth. Interestingly, the question I wished every patient asked me. This one habit makes most problems worse. Before you take any treatment, watch this. Notice something? The idea already exists. The blank page disappeared. Now let's move. Minute 0 to minute 15. Hooks, and here's what we discovered. The hooks decide whether the education gets consumed. Not because education is not important, because attention comes first. Nobody watches the middle if they ignore the beginning. I call this the attention gateway. The attention gateway, the first few seconds determines everything. And here's the funny part. Most doctors manually build hook libraries. Open Instagram, search their niche, save reels, study first line, collect patterns, build library, completely valid approach. But it takes hours, sometimes days, which is why Doctor Creator Toolkit includes more than 1000 hooks. Not because doctors are lazy, because doctors are busy. Huge difference. So, for the first 15 minutes, pick an idea, pick a hook, write a short script, nothing complicated. Hook, one explanation, one insight. Done. And suddenly you have 10 potential scripts, not one, 10. Now let's move to the next 25 minutes. That part everybody overthinks. And here's where things get interesting because there are two parts, not one, two. Option A, talking to camera. Very simple. One idea, one recording, say the hook and one supporting point. Stop recording. Done. Next reel. Not a TED talk, not a documentary, a reel. Now, some doctors immediately panic. I don't like being on camera. Perfect. Use option B. I call this the B-roll shortcut. The B-roll shortcut, and honestly, it's one of my favorite discoveries because content still gets made without camera anxiety. Here's what you have to record: writing prescriptions, reading patient files, sanitizing hands, typing notes, walking through a hallway, taking a coffee break, adjusting a stethoscope, arranging your desk. Simple, everyday activities. Nothing dramatic, nothing performative. Just your normal life. Record each clip. Medium shot, close-up shot, done. Now suddenly you have a visual library. Reusable forever. Let's pause here because something important just happened. You did not create content, you created assets. Huge different. Assets can be reused. Assets can be compound. Assets save time. I call this the asset library. One recording session, months of usage. Now let's continue. The next 20 minutes, voiceovers. Find a quiet corner, that's it. Not a studio, not a production room, a quiet corner. Then record a simple voiceover, things you already say every day, things you probably repeat thousands of times. For example, most people don't realize how important life is. Pause, explain, done. This habit prevents half of the issues I see. Pause, explain, done. This is always my first red flag. Pause, explain, done. Right? Now, if you feel this often, here's what it means. A mistake I see daily as a doctor. This tiny change improves your health fast. Start doing this. It helps immediately. Here's what people get wrong. This one habit protects you long time. If you are confused, start here. Each voiceover takes about 20 seconds, not 20 minutes. 20 seconds. And before you know it, 10 voiceover exist. Now, let's have some fun because this is where the magic happens. You have B-roll, you have voiceovers, now mix them together. That's it. Literally drag one voiceover onto one B-roll sequence. Instant reel, instant voiceover, instant reel, next voiceover, instant reel. And here's the strange thing. The visuals can stay almost identical. The experience still feels different because the voice changed, the lesson changed, the insight changed. That's why this scales. I call this the content multiplication effort. One visual library, many messages, many reels, many opportunities. Now let's address the objection because I know exactly what's happening. Some doctors are thinking, this sounds too simple. Correct, it is simple. That's the point. Complex systems don't survive busy schedules. Simple systems do. Doctors don't need another full-time job. Doctors need a repeatable process. Huge distinction. And that's what it is. Not creativity, not inspiration, a system. Let's do the math. 10 ideas, 10 hooks, 10 voiceover, 10 reels, 1 hour. And before anyone says, but won't they look basic? Let me ask you something. Do patients care about your lighting or your explanation? Interesting question. Because useful content beats beautiful content surprisingly often, especially in healthcare. Patients don't save videos because of camera angles. Patients save videos because information helped them. That's what matters. Now imagine repeating this system every week. Not every day. Every week, 1 hour. After 1 month, you have 40 reels. After 3 months, you have over 100. After 6 months, you have content library most doctors never built. And here's where the compound effect appears. Not immediately, gradually. Patients started recognizing your face. Patients starts sharing your content. Patients start mentioning your videos. Patients starts arriving already familiar with you. And all of it came from a process that felt manageable. That's the important part. So basically, the goal is not creating perfect content. The goal is removing friction. Because one friction disappears, consistency becomes possible, and consistency changes everything. Let me leave you with a picture. It's a Sunday evening. You spend 60 minutes creating content, not 60 hours, not entire day, 60 minutes. You schedule your reels, close your laptop, go back to your family, go back to your life, go back to your clinic, and throughout the week, content keeps working. Patients keep watching, patients keep learning, patients keep discovering you. Not because you're spending all day online, because you built a system and eventually, while other doctors continue saying, I don't have time, you'll know something they don't. 60 minutes is enough. And that's when content stop feels like work. I want to do something different in this session. For the last few lessons, we have been talking about patience, trust, communication. We have been talking about why some doctors attract patients more easily than others. We have talked about what patients are actually looking for. We have talked about what makes content work. But for the next few minutes, I don't want to teach you anything. I don't want to give you another framework and strategy. I simply want to show you the future. Because understanding something intellectually is one thing. Being able to see it is something else entirely. And right now, if you're like most doctors, you're probably thinking, okay, I understand the theory, psychology, and logic. But what does this actually look like in real life? That's what this session is about. I want to show you what happens when this is actually running. Not in theory, not on a whiteboard, not inside a presentation, inside a real practice. So for the next few minutes, imagine you have implemented everything we have been discussing. Not perfectly, not like an influencer, not posting every day, just consistently. Let's begin with day 30. It's a Tuesday morning. You arrive at your clinic. The day starts exactly the way it always does. You greet your staff, you check your schedule, you grab a cup of tea or a coffee, you begin your consultations. Nothing feels dramatically different. At least not yet. The first patient comes in, then the second, then the third. The morning moves along normally. And then your phone buzzes. You glance down, it's a WhatsApp message, a number that you don't recognize. The message says, hello doctor, I saw your video about recurring knee pain while climbing stairs. I have been facing the exact same problem. Can I know your consultation timings? You read the message, then you read it again because something about it feels different. Nobody referred this patient. No hospital sent them. No colleague introduced them. No family member recommended you. They found you on their own. They watched your content, they felt understood, and they decided to reach out. For the first time, the connection becomes real. The bridge between content and patients is no longer theoretical. It's real. A real patient, a real message, a real inquiry. And what's interesting is, after that message arrives, you don't suddenly become rich. Your clinic doesn't become full overnight. Nothing dramatic happens. But your confidence changes because now you have proof. Not hope, proof. Few days later, another message arrives, then another, not every day, not consistently, but enough to make you realize something. Patients are watching, even when you think they aren't. Patients are paying attention, even when the number seems small. And that's what day 30 usually feels like. Not explosive growth, not a packed waiting room. Just the first signs that something is beginning. A few weeks later, it's Sunday evening. You're sitting at home, maybe watching television, spending time with family, or just relaxing. You're not working, you're not consulting, you're not doing anything related to your clinic. And your phone buzzes. It's an appointment inquiry. A patient asking about availability. A few minutes later, another inquiry arrives. And in that moment, something interesting happens. You realized your clinic is being discovered while you're not working. Think about that. For years, every patient came through activity. You worked, then patients arrived. You networked, then patients arrived. You attended conferences, then patients arrived. Everything required your active participation. But now, something is happening in the background. Content is working while you are at home, sleeping, consulting. Content is working even when you are doing absolutely nothing. And for the most doctors, that's the moment everything changes because they stop seeing content as a social media and start seeing it as an asset, something that continues creating value, and that's a very different way of thinking. Now let's move forward. A patient walks into your consultation room, you introduce yourself. Before you continue, they smile and then they say, Doctor, I have actually watched few of your videos. Immediately, something feels different. This consultation isn't starting at zero. Patient already knows your face, your communication style, how you explain things, and they already know what to expect. And because of that, trust already exists. Not complete trust, but enough trust to make the conversation easier. The patient is more relaxed, the patient asks better questions, the patient listens more carefully, and the consultation flows differently. And at the end of the consultation, they say, "Honestly, doctor, your videos are one of the reasons I booked." That's the sentence many doctors never forget. But it confirms something important. Patients aren't just watching, they are making decisions. And those decisions and are beginning to influence your practices. A few weeks later, another patient comes in. This patient say, "Doctor, I have watched almost all of your videos about diabetes. Now think about what that means." The consultation didn't start today. It was started weeks ago. The patient already understands some of the basics. They already knows your approach. They already trust your thinking. So instead of spending the first 15 minutes building credibility, you are able to spend those 15 minutes solving the problem. The conversation becomes deeper, the patient becomes more engaged, the relationship becomes stronger, and little by little, you start noticing that patients who come through content behave differently. Not better, differently. Warmer, more trusting, more prepared, more confident, they are in the right place. And that's one of the biggest changes that happens when this starts working. Now let's move to day 60. 2 months have passed. You have posted consistently. Not perfectly, not every day, just consistently. And this is where something interesting starts happening. People begin recognizing you. Not celebrity recognition, not fame, professional recognition. The kind of recognition that changes patient behavior. A patient walks in and says, "I have seen your videos." Another patient says, "My wife follows your page." Another says, "My brother shared one of your reels." At first, these comments feel random. Then they start becoming common. And eventually you realize something. Your name is circulating. Not because you're promoting yourself, because you're educating. And education creates visibility. Visibility creates familiarity. Familiarity creates trust. Trust creates action. And for the first time, you start feeling the momentum. Not because your clinic is suddenly full, but because people know who you are before they meet you. And that changes everything. Now here's something that happens before most doctors even notice the results. Your receptionist notices, your front desk notices, your assistant notices. One morning, your receptionist says, "Doctor, a lot of people are mentioning Instagram." You nod and continue working. A few days later, she says, "Another patient said they found you through your videos." Then another, then another. Eventually, these comments become normal. And that's when you realize something important. Patient behavior has changed. Patients aren't discovering you the way they used to. They are arriving differently. They are arriving with familiarity and trust. And because of that, the entire patient journey changes. Your receptionist isn't hearing, "Can I know more about the doctor?" Instead, they are hearing, "I have already watched the doctor's videos." Think about that difference. The trust building has already started before the patient even books, before the patient even walks into the clinic, before the patient even speaks to you. And that's when you start realizing the system is working. Not dramatically, not overnight, but steadily. And the steady growth usually is the strongest kind. Now let's talk about a moment many doctors never expect. A patient comes in and you help them. The consultation goes well. Nothing unusual. A few weeks later, another patient books. Same surname. You assume it's a coincidence. Then you discover it's their spouse. A few weeks later, another family member books. Then a sibling, then a parent. Then someone else connected to the family. And suddenly you realize something. Your content didn't create just one patient. It created a conversion. The first patient watched your content, trusted you, had a good experience, then told the people around them. That's how trust spreads. Most doctors think content generate patients, but often content generate conversations. And conversation generate patients. One trusted patient becomes two. Two becomes three, three becomes five. Not because you're pushing referrals, because trust naturally spreads. And once you see that happen for the first time, you start viewing content daily. You realized every patient is potentially the beginning of multiple future patients. Not through marketing, but through trust. Now imagine another situation. You're attending a conference or a medical event, or you're simply meeting another doctor. During the conversation, they casually say, "Have been seeing your content lately," or "Patients mention your videos," or "You're becoming quite visible online." It's a simple comment, but it lands differently because visibility was never really the goal. The goal was trust. patience, and building a stronger practice. But now you realize visibility is becoming a byproduct, not because you're trying to become famous, because you're consistently educating, and something changes internally. You stop feeling invisible, you stop feeling like you're completely dependent on referral networks. You stop feeling like growth is entirely controlled by external factors. For the first time, you feel like you're building something that belongs to you, something that grows because of your efforts. And that's an incredibly powerful feeling. Now let's move to day 90. 3 months, 30 or 40 videos, dozens of opportunities to build trust, to educate, and to become familiar. And this is where many doctors begin seeing meaningful results. A patient walks into your clinic. Before you even begin the consultation, they smile and say, "Doctor, I have been following your videos for months. I already know a lot about what we are discussing today." That sentence tells you everything. The system is working. The patient isn't arriving as a stranger. They are arriving as someone who already trusts you, someone who believes you and understands their situation, someone who already feels confident they are in the right place. And because of that, the consultation becomes easier, questions become better, trust becomes stronger, decision becomes faster. The patient isn't deciding whether to trust you, they are deciding how to move forward. And that's a completely different conversation. Now imagine looking at your calendar, not a packed calendar, not perfection, just different. The gaps are smaller, the inquiries are more consistent, the uncertainty is lower, the pressure feels lighter. You still value referrals, you still appreciate referral partners, but you are no longer completely dependent on them because patients are finding you directly. And that creates something every doctor wants: stability, not overnight success. Stability. And stability is more valuable than rapid growth. Stability allows you to plan, to invest, and to grow with confidence. And that's what you're beginning to build: a more predictable, resilient, and a stronger practice. Now let's fast forward. 1 year from today, you have continued show up, educating, and helping patients understand. And now you have a library of content. 50 videos, maybe 100 or maybe more. Patients discovered videos you created months ago. Some discovered videos you created last year. Content is working while you're consulting, sleeping, or while you're on vacation. Not because you're constantly creating, because trust compounds. Every video, explanation, and patient interaction becomes an asset. And over time, those assets start working together. This is why consistency beats intensity. You don't need to become an influencer. You don't need millions of followers. You need trust, and trust compounds. That's the real power of content, not attention, trust. So what does it looks like when it's running? It's look like a WhatsApp inquiry from a patient who found you through a video. I have been following your content. It's look like your receptionist hearing the same comments repeatedly. It looks like a family member booking after another family member had a great experience. It looks like colleagues noticing your visibility. It looks like consultation that begin with trust instead of skepticism. It looks like a calendar that feels more stable. It looks like a practice that feels more predictable. And most importantly, it looks like a doctor who is no longer relying on single source of patients. Not because the referrals stop mattering, because you have added another source of trust, visibility, and patient acquisition. And that's the destination. Not followers, not likes, not views, just trust. Because trust is what brings patient and creates stability, and is what turns content into a real system for growing your practice. That's what it looks like when it's running. One day, somebody will ask you to speak, not because you applied, not because you chased opportunity, not because you know the right people, because they watched your reels. That's the strange part. Most doctors think reels bring patients, and they do, but that's not the whole story, not even close, because something else happened, something most doctors never see coming. I call this the recognition effect. The recognition effect, the moment your expertise becomes visible beyond your clinic walls. And once that happens, unexpected doors begin opening. Here's what interesting. Most doctors underestimate how many people quietly watched. Patients watch, obviously, but patients are not only the audience. The other doctors watch. Hospital administrators watch. Medical associations watch. Healthcare companies watch. Journalists watch. University organizers watch. Conference organizers watch. Everybody watches silently. And that's important Because visibility compounds in strange way. A patient watches your reel today, books later. That's easy to understand. A conference organizer watches your reel today, invites you 6 months later. Harder to predict, but it happens. I found something fascinating. Doctors often think content is a patient acquisition tool. Partially true, but incomplete, because content is really a reputation distribution tool. Huge difference. Your reputation already exists. Your experience already exists. Content simply allows you more people to discover. I call this the expertise broadcast. The expertise broadcast, one explanation, hundreds of people hear it. One insight, thousands of people hear it. One reel, entire communities discover you. Now, think about your current reality. Most doctors explain brilliant things every day, inside consultation rooms, behind closed doors, to one patient at a time. The expertise exists, the audience does not. That's the bottleneck. And content removes that bottleneck. One explanation reaches 100, then thousands, then tens of thousands. The right people start noticing. Now, let's address something important, because some doctors think recognition is vanity. Interesting belief. Many doctors are uncomfortable with attention, uncomfortable with visibility, uncomfortable with standing out. Completely understandable. But recognition and vanity are not the same things. Huge distinction. Vanity seeks attention. Recognition earns attention. Very different. I call this the respect gap. The respect gap. The distance between being excellent and being known for excellent, right? Many doctors are incredibly skilled yet invisible. Not because they lack expertise, because expertise were never distributed. Now imagine this. It's a normal Tuesday afternoon. You're finishing consultations, phone buzzes, email arrives, LinkedIn message appears. Something simple, something unexpected. Doctor, we have been following your content. Interesting start. We are organizing a conference. We are hosting a healthcare event. We are conducting a university session. We would love to invite you as a speaker. And suddenly everything feels different, because this wasn't purchased. This wasn't forced. This wasn't requested. It was earned. That's why it felt different. And honestly, for doctors, status often matters more than people admit. Not ego, status. Different thing. Status is recognition from peers, recognition from institutions, recognitions from people you respect, and that's powerful. I call this the authority transfer. The authority transfer, the moment educational content becomes professional recognition. One reel becomes credibility. Credibility becomes visibility. Visibility becomes opportunity. Opportunity becomes authority. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The doctor creating content usually doesn't notice the transition. It happens gradually. One patient say, I saw your video. One colleague say, I follow your page. Interestingly, one hospital contacts you unexpected. One university reaches out. Surprisingly, one television producer messages. Now, things feel different, right? And every step feels smaller. Until you look back, then you realize something changed, because the audience expanded, not just in size, in quality. Now, let's handle the objection, because I know exactly what's coming. Some doctors think, I don't need fame. Good, you should not. That's not the point. The point is not the fame. The point is influence. Influence allows education at scale. Huge distinction. And here's what we discovered. The doctors who became respected publicly rarely chase respect directly. Interesting. They chase usefulness. The respect appears later. They chase education. The recognition appears later. They chase service. The opportunities appear later. I call this the respect paradox. The respect paradox, the people chasing respect rarely find it. The people creating value often receive it. And that's exactly why this works. Think about medical conferences, think about television interviews, think about guest lectures, think about association events. Organizers are looking for communicators, not just experts. Huge difference. There are many experts, far fewer communicators, and content proves communication ability instantly. A reel is evidence, not a claim, evidence. Anybody can say, I'm a good communicator. Content proves it. Anybody can claim authority. Content demonstrates it. That's why organizers pay attention, because uncertainty disappears. They don't need to guess. They already watched your explain things. They already saw audience reaction. They already saw your ability. Now, here's something beautiful. The opportunities often arrive from places you never expected. A college, a healthcare startup, a medical association, a podcast, a webinar, a newspaper, a television channel. The path is rarely predictable. But the pattern is visibility creates opportunity. And this matters because doctors are often impact driven. Helping one patient feels meaningful. Helping 1,000 feels meaningful too. Speaking to future doctors feels meaningful. Educating communities feels meaningful. Changing public understanding feels meaningful. Okay, that's where fulfillment appears, not just for growth. Fulfillment. I call this the impact expansion effect. The impact expansion effect, the expertise stays the same. The reach expands dramatically. And here's the irony. The doctors making reels for patients often becomes known as professionals. The doctors educating the public often becomes respected by institutions. The doctor explaining simple concept often receives complex opportunities. Funny how that's work. Because education travels, good explanations travels, clear thinking travels, useful insights travels, and once you start traveling, people start associating your name with expertise. Not because you told them to, because they experienced it repeatedly. That's the foundation of authority. Okay, so basically, reels are not only patient acquisition tools, they are reputation builders, authority builders, opportunity builders, respect builders. And once you understand that, the effort feels different, the purpose feels bigger. Let me leave you with a picture. It's 18 months from now. You receive an email. A university wants you to address student. A medical association wants you on a panel. A healthcare conference wants you as a speaker. A television channel wants your opinion. A podcast host wants an interview. And somewhere in that moment, you remember sitting here today, thinking reels were only for getting patients. Then you smile because the patients came. But something else came too: recognition, respect, influence, fulfillment, the opportunity to educate far beyond your clinic. And the most interesting part, none of it happened because you promoted yourself. It happened because you educated consistently, one reel at a time. And that's when you realize the day someone asked you to speak started the day you decided to share what you already know. The real reason most doctors never start. Before we move forward, I want to talk about something important. Because at this point in the course, most doctors are thinking one of two things. The first group is excited. They can see the opportunity, they understand the logic, they can imagine what their practice could look like if they implemented what we have discussed. But there is another group, and if I'm being honest, this group is usually much larger. This group is interested, agrees, and understands, but they haven't decided. They are sitting on the fence. And the reason they are sitting on the fence isn't because they don't believe the ideas. It's because something inside them is still resisting action. Now, what's interesting is that every doctor explains that resistance differently. One doctor says, I don't have time. Another says, I'm not comfortable on camera. Another says, I don't want to look promotional. Another says, my specialty is different. Another says, I tried something similar before. Different words, different explanations, different concerns. But they all produce the exact same result. Nothing changes. No content gets created. No trust gets built. No patient acquisition system gets created. No progress happens. And after hearing these conversations again and again, I realized something. Most of these aren't actually reasons. They are escape routes. Not because doctors are lazy, not because doctors lack ambitions, because human beings naturally avoid uncertainty. And content creation feels uncertain. You don't know how patients will respond. You don't know if it will work or it will be worth the effort. So your brain starts producing logical explanations for avoiding it. And those explanations sound reasonable. Today, I want to examine every one of them. Not dismiss them, not argue with them, just look at them honestly. Because once we do that, most of them become much smaller than they first appear. Part 2, I don't have time. Let's start with the most common concern. Time. Whenever I speak to doctors about creating content, this is usually the first objection. And to be fair, it's a valid concern. Doctors are busy. You're seeing patients, managing a clinic, handling operations, managing staff, reviewing reports, responding to emergencies, try to spend time with family, try to maintain some balance in life. The last thing you want is another responsibility. So when someone says you should create content, your immediate action is with what time? And honestly, that's a fair question. But let's look at it closely. The doctors getting results from content aren't spending 3 hours a day creating videos. They are not behaving like influencers. They are not recording dance videos. They are not spending weekends editing. Most successful doctors spend around one focused hour a week. That's it, 1 hour. Usually recording multiple videos in one sitting, 1 hour that creates content for entire week. Now compare that to other patient acquisition activities. Think about networking events, referral meetings, relationship building activities, conference attended purely for visibility. Many of those activities consume significantly more time. And the moment they are over, the impact stops. Content works differently. A consultation ends when the patient leaves. A referral conversation ends when the conversation ends. But a video can continue building trust for months. That's the difference. The effort is temporary, the value continues. So maybe the real question isn't, do I have time? Maybe the real question is 1 hour a week worth creating an asset that continues working after I have stopped working? Those are very different questions. And once you look at it that way, the time objection starts becoming much smaller. Part 3. I'm not comfortable on camera. Now let's talk about another concern. A concern that almost every doctor experiences. I'm not comfortable on camera. And honestly, very few people are. Most people dislike watching themselves. You notice your voice, posture, expressions, and every small imperfection. And suddenly everything feels awkward. And because it feels awkward to you, you assume it feels awkward to everyone else. But here's the important thing to understand. Patients are not watching your content the way you're watching your content. You're evaluating yourself. Patients are evaluating whether you can help them. Those are completely different experiences. Think about the doctors you personally trust. Do you trust them because they are great performers? Do you trust them because they have perfect camera presence? Do you trust them because they look like television presenters? Probably not. You trust them because they explain things clearly, they sound knowledgeable, they help you understand. Patients think exactly the same way. Most patients don't care if your lighting is perfect, background is beautiful, video editing is sophisticated. Patients care about one thing. Can this doctor help me understand my problem? That's it. And once you realize that, the pressure starts disappearing. Because you're no longer trying to become a content creator. You're simply becoming clearer communicator. The goal isn't performance, it is understanding. And doctors already spend their entire career helping people understand. A camera is simply other place where that happens. Part 4, I don't want to look promotional. This objection is different. But it's not really about content. It's about identity. Doctors spend years building professional credibility, trust, earning respect. The last thing they want is to appear salesy. And I completely understand that concern. In fact, I think it's a healthy concern because it comes from a desire to maintain professional integrity. But here's the distinction I want you to think about. Promotion says, choose me. Education says, let me help you understand. Promotion focuses on doctor, education focuses on patient. Everything we have discussed throughout this course is education, explaining symptoms, treatment options, misconceptions, what patients should watch out for. Answering questions patients already have. That isn't promotion, that is communication. Patients are already searching for answers, you are simply providing them. And medicine has always valued education. The medium has changed, the responsibility hasn't. When a doctor explains a healthy concern clearly, patients benefit. Whether that explanation happens inside the consultation room or through a video, it doesn't change the value. The value remains exactly the same. And once doctors understand this distinction, much of this discomfort disappears because they realize they are not becoming marketers, they are becoming educators at scale. Part 5, my specialty won't work. Let's talk about another objection I hear quite often. My specialty won't work on social media. Sometimes I hear this from surgeons, sometimes from physicians, and sometimes from specialists who believe that their field is too complex. then their thinking usually goes something like this. Dermatologists can do this because skin conditions are visual. Orthopedic doctors can do this because injuries are easy to explain. Dentists can do this because before and after results are obvious. But my specialty is different. And on the surface, that sounds reasonable. But let's look at it from the patient's perspective. Patients don't care whether a specialty is visual. Patients care whether they have questions. And every specialty generates questions. Every single one. A cardiology patient has questions. An orthopedic patient has questions. A gynecology patient has questions. A pediatric patient has questions. An ENT patient has questions. A gastrology patient has questions. A specialty changes, but patient behavior doesn't. Patients worry, search, get confused, and seek clarity. And wherever people seek clarity, educational content works. The question isn't, well, my specialty works. The better question is, what questions are my patients already asking? Because if patients are already asking questions, content can help answer them. And if content helps answer them, trust begins. That's true regardless of specialty. I have seen doctors from highly specialized fields build incredible trust simply because they explained complicated things in a simple way. Not because their specialty was exciting, their videos were entertaining, because they reduced confusion. And reducing confusion is one of the fastest ways to build trust. So whenever you find yourself thinking, my specialty won't work, ask yourself a different question. Do my patients have questions? Because if the answer is yes, then content can work. Part 6, I tried before. This objection is probably the most emotional because it comes from experience. The doctor isn't imagining failure. The doctor feels like they have already experienced it. Maybe they posted before, they uploaded videos, they spent few months creating content and nothing happened. Very few views, very little engagement, no patient inquiries. Eventually they stopped and now they are sitting here thinking, why would this be any different? If that's you, I want to say something important. You did not fail. The approach failed. Those are not the same thing. Think about medicine for a moment. When a treatment doesn't work, do we conclude that medicine itself doesn't work? Of course not. We ask different questions. Was it the right treatment? Diagnosis correct? Dosage appropriate? Was the approach suitable? The same logic applies here. Most doctors who tried content before were posting information, but they weren't creating trust. And those are very different things. Information alone rarely changes behavior. Trust changes behavior. A patient can watch 100 educational videos, but if none of those videos make them feel understood, they won't act. What we have been discussing throughout this course is not simply sharing information. It's creating trust, helping patients feel understood, feel seen, feel confident that you understand their situation. That's a completely different approach. So if you have tried before and it didn't work, don't immediately assume the opportunity doesn't exist. Sometimes the opportunity exists. The approach simply needs to change. And often that small shift creates a completely different outcome. Part 7. What if nobody watches? Now let's talk about a fear that many doctors never say out loud, but they definitely think about it. What if nobody watches? What if I put in the effort and nobody cares? What if I upload videos and they get almost no views? Let's be honest, the possibility feels uncomfortable. Nobody enjoys being ignored. But here's something important to understand. The goal isn't millions of views. It is reaching the right people. Those are very different goals. Imagine a doctor receives 1 lakh views from people who will never become patients. Now imagine another doctor reaches 500 people. But among those 500 people are 10 potential patients. Which result is actually more valuable? Most doctors focus on visibility. But healthcare is ultimately about relevance. You don't need everyone to watch. You need the right people to watch. And that's a very different standard. The purpose of content isn't mass entertainment. It is trust transfer. If the right patient watches your content and feels understood, the video has done its job. Even if it never becomes viral, even if it never reaches huge numbers, the internet often makes us believe that success equals attention. In reality, for doctors, success usually equals trust. And trust doesn't require millions of viewers. It requires the right viewers. Part 8. What if it doesn't work? This is probably the most rational concern. What if I invest time and effort and it doesn't work? That's a fair question. Every intelligent person asks that question before investing energy into something new. But let's examine both sides honestly. What happens if it works? You build visibility, trust, and a second source of patient acquisition. You reduce dependence on referrals. You strengthen your practice. Now let's look at the other side. What happens if you don't try? Nothing changes. You stay exactly where you are. The same patient acquisition system, dependency, vulnerabilities, and uncertainty. Notice something interesting. One option contains potential upside, the other guarantees no change. And that's why doing nothing is often a bigger risk than people realize. Because doing nothing feels safe, but staying dependent on a single source of patients isn't actually safe. It just feels familiar. And familiar often disguises itself as safe. The doctors who build stronger practices are usually the ones willing to experiment before they are completely certain. Not recklessly, not irresponsibly, but thoughtfully. And that's all we are really discussing here. Creating a new channel for trust. One that works alongside everything else you are already doing. Part 9, the cost of waiting. Now let's talk about something most doctors never calculate. The cost of waiting. Because whenever we delay action, we focus on what action costs. Very few people focus on what delay costs. Imagine a doctor waits 1 year before starting. Nothing dramatic happens. Life continues. The clinic continues operating. Patients continue arriving. Everything seems normal. But something invisible happened. 1 year of trust wasn't built, content wasn't created, visibility wasn't accumulated, and opportunity wasn't captured. And because the content compounds, that lost year matters. The doctor who starts today will have 12 months of trust building before the doctor who waits another year. That's a significant difference. The cost of waiting is rarely visible, which is why people underestimate it, but it's real. Every month you delay is a month of trust you could have been growing. A month of visibility could have been increasing. A month of future opportunities could have been developing. And over time, those months add up. Part 10, the decision point. So let's step back and look at everything we have discussed. We talked about time, camera confidence, professionalism, specialty concerns, previous failures, uncertainty, and waiting. And if you have stayed with me until this point, you have probably noticed something. None of these concerns are completely irrational. Most of them are understandable. Most of them are normal. Most of them are human. But none of them are strong enough to permanently prevent the action. Not when examined honestly. Not when viewed clearly. Not when viewed from a long-term perspective. Because at the end of the day, the question isn't whether content feels comfortable. The question is whether building trust before patients arrive is valuable. And I think by now you already know the answer. So let me leave you with one final thought. Most doctors don't fail because they lack skill, because they lack knowledge, because they lack capability. Most doctors stay stuck because they never move past hesitation. And hesitation is powerful. It sounds reasonable, intelligent, and responsible. But often hesitation is simply fear wearing a professional disguise. The good news is that you don't need complete certainty before taking action. Nobody ever has complete certainty. You only need enough confidence to take the first step. That's it. One step, one video, one explanation, one attempt. Because momentum begins with action, not confidence. Confidence comes later. Confidence comes from evidence, experience, and from seeing the process work. None of these things can happen until you begin. So as we finish this lesson, I don't want you thinking about content, algorithms, social media, and patients. The patients who are already searching for answers, confused, and looking for someone they can trust. Because those patients exist today. The only question is whether they will discover you. And that's a decision only you can make. Let's continue. So this is the part everybody's been waiting for, right? This is the actual mechanism, because here's the thing. Everybody tells you you need views, get more reach, get more followers. That's how you grow. Forget that. Forget views completely. Views don't pay your clinic rent. Views don't fill your appointment bookings. What you need is conversions. So let's go into it. And I'm going to go deep on this because this is genuinely the highest value 1.5 hour in this entire webinar. It's called the C5 formula, 5 steps. And once you understand this, you're going to look back at every reel you have ever posted and go, oh, that's exactly what was missing. So pay attention here, take notes if you want. Actually, I would recommend it because I'm going to give you a lot of examples across different specialties. So whatever you treat, you're going to hear something that clicks. So the real quicks, before I get into 5 steps, I want you to set the frame, okay, a formula. Some of you hear that word and you think, oh great, more theory, more acronomy to forget by tomorrow. No, it's not theory. This is the 5 steps that turns viewers into patients. That's whole promise. The C5 formula. Open with a pattern interrupt. Address a specific patient problem. Remove fear. Build authority. Make yourself the logical next step. 5 moves in order every single time. That's the C5 formula. And that's exactly what's inside the Doctor Creator Toolkit. Fully broken down with thousands of these already written for you. And look, I want to explain why I'm even confident saying every single time. Because that's a strong claim. It's because this is not really a doctor thing or a medical thing. This is just how human attention and trust works. I have seen the exact same 5 move patterns work in completely different industries, completely different products. The name changes, the wrapping changes, but the mechanism underneath identical. So when I say this works for dermatologists, it works for orthopedics, it works for dentists. I'm not guessing. It's the same reason a stop the scroll ad works. Whether you're selling shoes or selling consultations, people are people. The brain doesn't know the difference. Step 1, call out. This is a pattern interrupt. First 3 seconds, I cannot stress this enough. I want you to actually think about how you currently open your reels. Right now, in your head, replay your last reel's opening line. If your opening line with, hello, I am Dr. So and so, I need you to really sit with this. That does nothing. That's not a pattern interrupt. That's pattern confirmation. Because everybody on Instagram has seen doctor introduce themselves thousands times. The thumb doesn't even register its new information. It just keeps scrolling, same speed, same rhythm, nothing changed. What you need instead is call out that names that exact person watching, not people with health issues, anyone struggling with pain, the exact person. Example, diabetes. Top 3 mistakes people with diabetes make that spike blood sugar after meal. Boom. Anybody managing diabetes, thumbs up. Orthopedics. If you have been struggling with knee or leg pain for months. Dentist. If your gums bleed every single time you brush, watch this. Dermatologist. If you have ever tried 5 creams for your acne and nothing worked. Gynecologist. If your periods have been irregular for last 6 months. You see the pattern here? Every single one of these names, a specific person, a specific symptom, a specific duration sometimes, and that specificity is what does the work. The more specific, the better. A vague hook like struggling with your health, that's talking literally to everybody, which means functionally it's talking to nobody because nobody feels personally called out by something that broad. But women 35 to 45 with stubborn belly fat after pregnancy. Now, that's talking to maybe 2% of people scrolling, but that 2% stops dead every time because it feels like the video was specifically made for them. This is actually one of the most counterintuitive things for doctors to accept because in your training, in your practice, you're taught to be broad, to be inclusive, to not exclude anyone. But on Instagram, narrow wins. Narrow beats broad every single time. You're not trying to get everyone to watch. You're trying to get the right people stop scrolling completely. Step 1, summary, call out. Name the exact person watching. The more specific, the better. Step 2, conflict. Address the same problem. Address the problem they are already living through. So now you have got them stopped. Thumbs not moving. They are watching. But here's the danger zone. If the next 3 to 5 seconds are boring, generic, or feels like a lecture, you lose them just as fast as you got them. This is where I see the second biggest drop-off happen in the reels. Right after opening. What do you hear? Address a specific patient problem, not generally, specifically. By describing the struggle they are already living through. And describe it in their language, not medical language. Example, diabetes. You are exercising and taking medicines, but your readings are still high. Knee pain. You are doing physiotherapy, but your knees are still hurting. Dentist. You are brushing twice a day, using mouthwash, and your gums still bleed. Dermatologist. You have tried every cream the pharmacist recommended, and your skin not clearing up. Fertility expert. You have been trying over a year, and every test comes back normal. Nothing's helping. The formula. Effort plus continued failure plus frustration. That's the pattern. And this is the moment where viewers think, yes, this is me. That's the reaction you are engineering on purpose. Not nice video doc, not good information, But this is me. Once that thought happens, they are no longer a passive viewer. They have mentally become a patient who simply hasn't booked an appointment. Step 2 summary. Conflict, describe their lived struggles so they think, this is me. Step 3 clarity. Remove fear through intent. This might be favorite step because this is where you remove a fear and you do it by giving them a real insight, something they genuinely did not know. Comment below, I'll DM you. Give them something useful right now for free. Example, diabetes. Because controlling sugar isn't just about medication, it's about timing, portion, and habits. Leg pain. Because most leg pain is caused by poor circulation or muscle imbalance, not aging. Dentist. Bleeding gums are not normal, even if it's been happening for years. It's usually a sign of plaque build-up below the gum line that brushing alone can't reach. Dermatologist. Most adult acne isn't about washing your face more. It's hormonal and cream alone won't fix a hormonal issue. Orthopedics. Most back pain isn't a disc problem, it's a posture and muscle imbalance problem. What's happening here? You're taking something they assumed, aging, hormones, just how life is, and reframing it as mechanics. And mechanism can be fixed. That turns hopelessness into hope, and hope creates action. Step 3 summary. Clarity. Give a real insight that removes fears and create hope. Step 4 credibility. Build authority. At this point, they are hooked. They have learned something useful. But there is still a voice in the back of their head saying, okay, but does this person actually know what they are doing? These steps remove the doubt. Important. This is not MBBS, MD, gold medalist, 15 years experience. Nobody scrolling Instagram cares about that in that moment. They care about proof. Example, I have helped 50 plus insulin patients manage diabetes without cutting sweets. Patients who followed my 10 minutes daily corrective routine reported less pain and better mobility in 30 days. The more specific the numbers, the better. Specific numbers feels more believable. Compare, I have helped 100 patients versus I have helped 43 patients. The second feels more real because nobody invents oddly specific numbers. More examples like dentist, I have treated over 200 cases of bleeding gums without a single referral to surgery. Dermatologist, 9 out of my last 12 acne patients saw visible improvement within 6 weeks. Fertility experts, I have helped 30 plus couples conceive naturally before recommending any procedure. Step 4 summary. Credibility proves it with outcomes, not credentials. Step 5 call to action. The next step. This is where most doctors mess up. They either end the video, say follow for more health tips, neither create patience. Instead, make the next steps low frictional, specific, helpful. Example, diabetes. DM me sugar and I'll send you a 3-step blueprint for managing diabetes while eating sweets. DM me knee pain. DM me legs and I'll send a simple 3-step routine to reduce knee pain at home. Dentist. DM me gums. I'll send the 3-step routine I give my own patients before recommending any procedure. Dermatologist. DM me clear and I'll send the exact 3-product routine that worked for most of my acne patients. The real funnel, real, DM, trust, consultation, patient. That's the entire chain and the C5 formula builds every link in that chain. Now let's do the summary. Call out. Name the exact person watching. Conflict. Describe their lived struggle. Clarity. Give a real insight that creates hope. Credibility. Prove it with outcomes, not credentials. Call out. Give them one simple next step. That's the entire C5 formula. 5 steps, every reel, every time. So now why this formula works? And I genuinely want to be honest with you here. This formula alone, just understanding these 5 steps is probably the single most valuable thing I am showing you in entire webinar. This isn't a content tip. It's not an editing trick. It's not about better lighting. It's not about a nicer camera. It's a conversion mechanism. And the thing that makes it powerful is that it works the same way every single time regardless of specialty. Because human psychology don't change based on whether you treat diabetes or doing root canals. Now, look, where do you actually get this ready to use today? Where do you get the C5 formula laid specifically for your specialty? Where do you get hooks already written for you so you are not sitting there at 9 p.m. after a full day patients trying to invent a call out line from scratch? That's exactly what's in there. The complete C5 formula. Broken down step by step, exactly like we just walked through. Inside the toolkit, you will get the complete C5 formula, every piece of the framework, fully explained, fully broken down, ready to use immediately. Second, the 1,000+ hooks, already written, already organized, already categorized by specialty. So, whether you are a dermatologist, or orthopedist, a dentist, diabetologist, a gynecologist, a fertility specialist, you can find hooks for your exact specialty in seconds. No guessing, no starting at blank screen, no wondering what to post. Third, a 365-day content calendar, a full year content ideas mapped out, planned for you, so you'll never run out of ideas. Not next week, not next month, not 6 months from now, an entire year already done. Think about what we just covered for a second. Really think about it. 5 steps, that's it. Just 5 steps. If all of you walked away with today was the formula itself, nothing else, you could go right now. Today, rewrite your last reel using these 5 steps and it would convert noticeably better than whatever you have posted last week. Now imagine having the formula, 1,000 specialty specific hooks, a full year's worth of content ideas, all in one place, ready to use. That's not a small upgrade. That's the difference between guessing every week and never having to guess again. It's the difference between maybe this reel works and I know exactly why this reel works. It's the difference between posting content and building patient acquisition system. And I know for some of you watching this right now, you're probably thinking, I have been doing this completely wrong. And honestly, if your reels have been getting views but not getting DMs, getting views and not getting appointments, getting views but not getting patient, then yes, this is probably the missing piece. It was never your effort. It was never your camera quality. It was never your medical knowledge. It was never your bedside manner. The problem wasn't you. The problem was the formula. Because views don't automatically become patients. There has to be a bridge. The C5 formula is that bridge. It turns views into conversations, conversations into trust, trust into consultations, consultations into patients. That's the entire system. And now you have got it. So here's what I would genuinely recommend. Take what you have learned today, use it, apply it, test it. But if you want complete system, if you want the complete C5 formula, if you want over 1,000 hooks already written for your specialty, if you want a 365-day content calendar mapped out for you, then get the Doctor Creator Toolkit. Everything is already done. Everything is already organized. Everything is already built. So you can focus on what you do best, helping patients. No more guessing, no more wondering what to post. No more hoping a reel accidentally works. You now have exact frameworks doctors using to turn views into booked patients. Click the link below, get the Doctor Creator Toolkit and start using the C5 formula on very next reel. Because the sooner you start using the right formula, the sooner your content starts turning into consultations. And the sooner your consultation starts turning into patients. Thank you for being here. I appreciate your time, I appreciate your attention, and I can't wait to see you what happens when you start implementing this. So this is a big one. This is 7 tips and I'm going to go through every single of these in real depth. Because the goal here is simple. How do you look credibility? How do you look human? How do you become genuinely unforgettable? Without chasing trends, without relying on lucks, without waiting around hoping that algorithm decides to like you today. 7 tips. Let's go. Tip 1. Tell stories. This might be the single biggest unlock in this entire module. So I want you to spend real time on it. Because most doctors think patients remember information. They don't. Patients remember stories. And once you understand this distinction, your content instantly becomes more memorable. Let's compare 2 pieces of content. Version 1. High sugar causes insulin resistance. Now, is that true? Absolutely. Is it medical accurate? Of course. People will remember it in 5 minutes after watching your reel? Probably not. Now, compare that to this. One of my patients, Balaji, came to me with blood sugar reading of 420. 12 months later, his reading was 95. Same medical truth? completely different delivery, completely different impact. The reason is simple. Numbers by themselves are forgettable. Stories give those numbers meaning. The moment you attach a name, a challenge, and a timeline to a fact, it becomes something people can visualize. People remember what they can visualize. Why stories work? I really want you to sit with this because it goes against everything doctors train to do. In medical school, you train to communicate through facts, research, data, clinical accuracy, and all of those things matters. But on social media, it isn't a medical journal. Instagram is an attention platform, and attention follows emotion. People don't remember information. People remember how information made them feel. That's why stories work. Because stories create emotion, emotion creates memory, memory creates trust, and trust creates patience. Let's go back to the Balaji example. The number 420 to 95, it's not memorable, but Balaji journey is. People picture the struggle, people picture the frustration, people picture the possibility of change, and suddenly they begin thinking, if Balaji can do it, maybe I can too. That's the moment where content stops being educational and start becoming transformational. What most doctors get wrong. Most doctors post facts, they explain symptoms, they explain causes, they explain treatments, and while all of that information may be useful, it's often forgettable because facts don't create emotional connection, stories do. A simple story framework. Every great patient story follows a simple structure. Before, what was the patient's problem? What were they struggling with? What was not working? During, what changed? What action did they take? What realization did they have? After, what result happened? What improved? What became possible? That's it. Before, during, after, simple but incredibly powerful. The doctors who grow fastest online are not necessarily the smart doctors. They are the doctors who communicate expertise through stories. They know how to make medical information feel human, and human content always win. Inside the Doctor Creator Toolkit, we have included 30 plus storytelling formulas. So you never have to guess how to structure a patient story again. You simply take a raw patient experience and plug into a proven framework. Make your content easier to create, easier to remember, and far more likely to convert viewers into patients. Tip 2. Share your beliefs. This one is subtle but incredibly important because the difference between a viral doctor and a forgotten doctor is often not the advice, it's perspective. Read that again. The difference isn't the advice, it's the angle. Plenty of doctors give correct advice. Plenty of doctors share useful information, yet nobody remembers them. Why? Because generic advice does not create connection, perspective does. So here's the rule. Don't just post advice, post perspective. Ask yourself, what frustrates me about misinformation in my specialty? What do I wish patient knew sooner? What mistake do I keep seeing over and over again? What belief do I strongly disagree with? That's where great content comes from. Not information, perspective. For example, instead of saying exercise helps improve diabetes, the biggest mistake diabetics make is thinking medication alone will solve the problem. See the difference. Same topic, different angle. One feels like advice, other feels like conviction, and the conviction is memorable. People don't follow doctors because they are correct. People follow doctors because they stand for something, because they believe something, because they have a viewpoint. People remember what you stand for. That's why perspective creates loyalty. When people hear your beliefs repeatedly, they begin to understand how you think. And when you understand how you think, they begin to trust how you treat patients. That's why sharing beliefs is so powerful. It humanizes you, it separates you, and it makes you memorable. Tip 3. You don't need a videographer. This might be one of the most freeing lessons in this entire module because so many doctors delay content creation for completely unnecessary reasons. They tell themselves, I need a better camera, I need a professional lighting, I need someone to edit my videos, I need a studio. No, you don't. The best performing doctor content online today is mostly shot on phones, simple environment, simple setup, because patients don't care about production quality nearly as much as you think. They care about clarity, trust, relevance. Some of the best performing videos are filmed inside clinic, offices, and even cars, not in studios, not with production team, not with expensive equipments. And honestly, that's a good news because it means you can start immediately. The biggest advantage social media gives doctor is accessibility. You don't need a permission, you don't need equipments, you don't need a production crew, you don't need your phone. Inside the Doctor Creator Toolkit, we show you exactly how to create content using our camera confidence technique, because doctors don't have a content problem, they have a confidence problem. They know what to say, they just don't know how to say it naturally on camera. That's a skill, and skill can be learned. We have also included our shoot 30 days of content in one day system. So instead of constantly worrying about content every day, you can batch everything in a single session. One day, one shoot, 30 days of content, done. Imagine how much easier content becomes when you are not thinking about it every morning. That's the goal. Create one, post consistently, stay focused on your patients. Tip 4. Turn content into connection. This is where content becomes personal. And honestly, this is where most doctors start standing out. Because information creates attention, but connection creates trust. Talk about your first failure. Talk about your biggest fear early in your career. Talk about mistakes you have made. Talk about lessons you have learned. Those moments matters because they remind people there's a human behind the white coat. People trust people more than titles, and the doctors who grow online understand this. When you share a personal story, something interesting happens. A viewer stops seeing you as a doctor and starts seeing you as a person I trust. That's a completely different relationship. For example, you could share the biggest mistake I made during my first year of practice, or the patient case that completely changed how I approach treatment, or the misconception I correct almost every day. These stories create emotional connection, and emotional connection creates loyalty. A patient who feels connected to you is far more likely to follow you, watch your content, share your videos, book a consultation, because trust has already started forming before they ever meet you. Inside the Doctor Creator Toolkit, we have included our Audience Brain module and 365-day content calendar. So, if you have never felt comfortable on camera before, you will know exactly what to say, how to say it, why it works. You don't need to become an entertainer. You don't need to become an influencer. You simply need the right structure. And structure does most of the heavy lifting for you. Tip 5. Don't chase trends, create series. This is something I really want to hammer home because I see so many doctors burning themselves out trying to keep up with whatever the trend is popular this week. A trending sound, a trending format, a trending challenge, a trending meme. Here's the problem: trends die fast. You spend hours creating content around trend. By the time you post, everyone has already seen dozens of versions of it, and the algorithm has already moved on. That's why trends are exhausting. You are constantly chasing, constantly reacting, constantly trying to catch up. Instead of chasing trends, build series, because series compound. Think about if someone watches one video of your series and finds it useful, they are far more likely to watch the second, and then the third, and then the fourth. Series create anticipation. People start expecting your content. They start recognizing your format, and eventually they start remembering you. For example, 30 days of diabetes myth. Every day you bust one common myth. Doctors explain. Every video explain one confusing health topics in simple language. 1 minute health fix. One practical takeaway in under 60 seconds. Think, I wish my patient knew earlier. One lesson per video. Notice something? These ideas can continue for months, maybe even years. That's the beauty of series. You don't wake up every morning wondering, what should I post? And from branding perspective, series are powerful because people begin associating the format with you. Instead of being some doctor I saw online, you become the doctor who explains myths, the doctor who simplifies diabetes, the doctor who answers patient questions. That's authority, and authority compounds over time. Inside the Doctor Creator Toolkit, we have included the latest trend series framework and show your expertise technique. These frameworks helps you create content people remember, not because it's trendy, but because it's consistent. Because trends create temporary attention, series create long-term authority. Tip 6. Copy hooks from top doctors. Now stay with me. Because I know this sounds almost like cheating, but it's not. Most people think virality comes from creativity or from being original, from inventing something nobody has ever said before. That's not actually how content works. Virality is about patterns. The biggest creator don't start from zero every time. They study what's already working, then they adapt the structure. Copy the structure, not the content. Think about medicine. Doctors don't reinvent treatment from scratch. They study proven systems. They study what works. Then they apply it properly. Content works exactly same way. If a hook has already captured attention millions of times, there's probably something useful to learn from it. For example, the biggest mistake people make with nobody talks about this, but if you're struggling with dash, watch this. Before you do dash, know this. Most people think dash, but actually, these structures work because they tap into curiosity, and curiosity drives attention. The mistakes most doctors make is thinking, I need to be original every time. No, you need to be effective. Originality without attention gets ignored. Attention gives your expertise a chance to be heard. That's why learning patterns matters. Inside the Doctor Creator Toolkit, we have already done the research. We have analyzed over 1000+ doctor reels and extracted the pattern that consistently performing. The result, 1000+ viral hook templates, ready to use, ready to adapt, ready to make content creation dramatically easier. Whether you are a general practitioner, pediatrician, dentist, psychologist, surgeon, dermatologist, yoga teacher, meditation coach, the underlying attention patterns remain surprisingly similar because at the end of the day, you are not competing against doctor, you are competing against distraction. And the creators who recognize patterns first usually grow the fastest. Tip 7. Research like a doctor. This is the final tip, and honestly, it might be the most important one because it ties everything else together. The best creators don't wing it, they don't freestyle, they don't hit record and hope something useful comes out. They prepare, which should feel familiar because that's exactly how doctors operate. Before making a diagnosis, you research. Before performing a procedure, you prepare. Before recommending a treatment, you gather information. So, why would content creation be any different? The best content creators think like a researcher. They ask, what problem am I solving? What question am I answering? What misconception am I correcting? What outcome I am helping the viewers achieve? Then they build content around those answers. Great content is designed, not improvised. And that's why their content feels clear because clarity is usually the result of preparation. Most weak content isn't weak because creator lack expertise. It's weak because the structure wasn't planned. The message gets lost, the point gets diluted, the audience leave halfway through. Good content feels effortless, but it usually designed. Inside Doctor Creator Toolkit, we have included scripting from ChatGPT, scripting from AI modules, and advanced content frameworks to help you create content that flow naturally, holds attention, feels conversational, sounds authentic, keep viewers watching until the end. Because great content rarely happens by accident, it happens by design. Let's bring everything together because I want you walking away from this module with something actionable. The do's. Tell story. People remember stories more than facts. Share your beliefs. Perspective creates connection. Use your smartphone. Don't wait for better equipment. Create series. Series creates authority. Copy proven hooks. Learn patterns instead of reinventing everything. Research and script thoroughly. Preparation creates better content. The don'ts. Don't lead with statistics alone. Facts without emotion are forgettable. Don't post generic advice. Advice without perspective gets ignored. Don't chase trends. Trends disappear, authority remains. Don't wing it. Structure beats improvisation every single time. Bring it all together. Every one of these 7 steps back to the same thing. System, frameworks, process. For storytelling technique, 30 storytelling formulas. For confidence on camera, camera confident technique. Shoot 30 days of content in 1 day method. For connection, audience brain module. 365-day content calendar. For authority, series framework. Show your expertise technique. For attention, 1000+ viral hook templates. Built from researching over 1000+ doctor reels. For scripting, AI scripting methods, advanced content frameworks. Every single piece in one place. The Doctor Creator Toolkit. You don't need to master 7 separate skills while running a busy clinic practice. You don't need to spend years figuring this out through trial and error. You need one system, one roadmap, one toolkit already built, already structured, already ready to use. Think about everything we have covered: stories, perspective, confidence on camera, connections, series, hooks, research. Individually, each one can improve your content. They completely change how patients perceive you online. Instead of becoming another doctor posting health tips, you become doctor people remember, the doctor people trust, the doctor people recommend, and ultimately the doctor people book appointments with. That's the real goal. Not views, not likes, not followers, patience, trust, authority, and long term growth. So don't wait another 6 months hoping your content somehow improve on its own. Don't spend the next 2 years trying to figure out everything out from scratch. The frameworks already exist. The shortcuts already exist. The system already exists. Click the link below and get the Doctor Creator Toolkit. Start applying these 7 tips today and start creating content your patients actually remember.